Hello, my story animated. Please, make my story animated.
I'm Stephanie. I live in law with my parents. They were everything to me until I met Jude, my new boyfriend. I love him so much, I don't want to get separated from him never and ever. I met Jude a few days after my parents and I moved to LA because my father had just been transferred to lead a branch of the stockbroking company he works for in our old city of residence. At first, I didn't buy the idea because I would have to lose all my friends and, most importantly, my plans to get back at Truce, my first boyfriend. Truce was 3 years my senior, but our relationship was delicate. I felt safe whenever I was with him. He was an honest guy, classy and straightforward before everything changed. He was the head of the football team then, and I was just a girl on the cheerleading team. My parent knew about my relationship with Truce, and I don't think they were happy about it. My father didn't really act up, but my mom, let's just say she was acting like a typical mother who thinks her child isn't in safe hands, would do. I really appreciate their concerns, but I thought Truce wasn't that bad. Truce did visit my place from time to time, and he's always welcomed. Truce, who had no other objectives, don't waste time in the living room. We always head straight to my bedroom, you know. I was the lousy one. I screamed a lot and said so many naughty words. I think my parents heard but weren't bothered, while Truce, on the other hand, just remained cool. I did think I didn't satisfy him, but he never said that. What else can I ask for, you'll say? Moreover, my parents were busy individuals. That hasn't changed a bit anyways. They traveled on business trips a lot. I frequently followed Truce out to places or clubs. Most of them weren't so cool, but I didn't care. I felt safe with Truce. He was like my big brother. Though still against my parents' counsel, my association with Truce was perfect until that fateful night, one of the nights my parents went on their business trips as usual. Truce came to my place. As usual, he called on me, and as I was dressing up, he bumped in and met me not fully dressed. He took a long gaze at me from the head down. I noticed this, so I stopped dressing. I know I have a good shape. Assuming the mirror was lying to me, people say I took after my mom. She's hot. I've not gotten all those curves, and the 2 babies on my chest are not fully grown, but I had potentials. Truce kept admiring me. His mouth was gaping up. Elle could tell he wanted to have me, but I was teasing him. I hurried up with my dressing. I noticed he was hard, but he kept his cool. I smiled. To satisfy his lust, I kissed him passionately and whispered to his ear when we returned. We found our way to his motorcycle outside. It wasn't like those pretty bikes in Hollywood movies, but it rocks for a high school student to have his own bike. He started the cycle, and I jumped on it from behind. I held him by the waist as he zoomed off. We stopped in front of a club. This one was new. We had been to different clubs repeatedly, but not this one. I started getting uncomfortable. I looked at Truce's face, and he smiled back at me. I gulped in a handful of saliva purposefully to show my discomfort, but his emotion didn't really change. Then he came close to me as if he was going to hug me and whispered to my hearing something I never forgot: "This is where I really belong." Had I known, I would have taken to the heel, but I remained stubborn despite my instincts. Let's just assume I love being gullible, at least for that time or for the worse my whole life. My life is about to change for good on the positive part, but looking at that situation, things didn't go as planned. Well, I never had any plan, Truce plan at all. This was the day I will never forget. This was the day that changed my family's life. My father took that gig in life even though he was doing just fine here. My mom thought leaving was the best too, at least she would avoid shame, and it was depression for me on my side. I remembered vividly after that night, I said to myself, never will I date any guy until the end of high school. That didn't last much. Jude came into the picture earlier than the end of high school. Maybe I can't be trusted with my own words either. My emotion got the best of me, and I love it. Truce placed his hands around my neck as we walked towards the bouncer. I was a lot shorter than him, but I pretended to be cool with it. He started muttering some jokes that I found not funny anymore due to my current situation, but continued credulous. When we got to the bouncer, I became the stranger. It was as if he had known the bouncer longer than I knew my mom. There was great chemistry between the big guy and Truce. He allowed us in without asking for any ID. Funny, right? I know it is a culture for bouncers to ask for IDs, but this time was different. My mind flashed back to when we first met after a football game against the other best team in town, my then high school team's archenemy Oaks Christian. As the team's captain, Truce got injured early in the game. He could not proceed. He was stretched out of the playing zone, and since I was the youngest in the cheerleading team, I basically did not cheerlead at all. I was more like the errand girl in the group. I got the first aid box and walked reluctantly towards the team's captain. No one stopped me, not even the teachers. Everyone kept looking at the brave small girl walking towards the biggest boy in school. I have the skills since I was part of the Red Cross community in my junior school. I tended to his wound and made him very comfortable. Then I saw a smile on his face. I think he was satisfied with my services. He said, "I am Truce Dempsey. What is your name?" I can't believe my ears. Almost confused, I replied, "I am Stephanie Brown." Then he said, "Will you go have coffee with me tomorrow at the cafe?" Somebody hit me. The biggest boy in high school just asked me out. I carefully said, "Yes, I would love to have a cup of coffee." That was just 3 months ago from this fateful day. I thought I knew him, but that night I realized I didn't know him that much. I wanted to cry already. We entered the club. Almost everybody recognized Truce. I was surprised. How long has he been visiting this place? It was as if he was there the night before. He introduced me to everyone. The guys were top-notch, and the girls were so hot. Well, I'm the youngest, and I had potentials. The ladies are sexy to behold, and their curves are heaven. I felt like holding their 2 babies in my hands. I felt like an opposite gender by gazing at them. I noticed all the details they possessed. Before getting caught off guard, I quickly brought out my phone and started watching some videos. While I was busy with my phone, the ladies were whispering and laughing. I think they were talking about me, but who cares? I shrugged it off as I tried to find out what the boys were up to. Those guys were really planning something big or maybe crazy. Truce looked at my side from time to time and winkled at me at every instance. Everything there was kind of creepy. The noise was so loud like every other club. The bartenders were doing their job, but 10 people were in attendance. All are familiar individuals, with me being the only stranger. The guys are done with their presumed board meeting, and each guy went for their girls. Truce came to me and asked me what will I love to take. This wasn't the best moment to get drunk. I replied, "Water is fine." He looked at me in disappointment, but I didn't care at this moment. I repeated I would love cold water. He stood up, went straight to the bar and got himself a few beers, and got me 2 chilled bottles of water from the big freezer beside the bar. I sipped my water while every other person was marrying. The party moved from seriousness to naughtiness. The other girls are doing their thing before I could get my head around what is going on. A certain girl was really riding on a guy's lap so hard. Looking at his face, you can tell he will soon go. The girl was so good. Several hours had gone, a lot of adult scenes. All the guys present had wet themselves except Truce, who was on his 6th bottle of beer. Then, here came the moment they had been waiting for. I was here to be initiated as Truce's new girlfriend, and I knew nothing about it. Dave, Truce's closest pal in the clique and undeniably the gang leader, broke it to me. I would be stripped naked, and all the guys will take turns on me. I fired back at the idea, and they all laughed. Lucy, the sexiest, curviest, and most endowed of the other 4 girls, said, "It's the ritual only once, and you're welcome to the club, baby." I tried to fight my way out of the club. The ladies stripped me off my clothes, and the guys started dancing around me. I felt ashamed, and I cried. I was let out to go, and Truce made me go home all by myself that night. That night, I will never forget. I wept all night, my face swollen. Truce didn't call or check on me. Even without saying it, I knew it was over. The following day, I got dressed for school. On getting to the school environment, everyone's eyes were locked on me. There were whispers and disgusting faces everywhere. It was only me that was left to wonder what was going on. I got to my class, and the atmosphere was still the same. I sat on my chair, still thinking about what happened last night. Kathy and Elle, my 2 friends, came towards me. They told me about a video of me dancing naked with some unrecognized boys posted on the school website the previous night. What? It was filmed. I said that to myself, but it felt as if I was shouting out loud. No, I am doomed, I softly said to myself. They tried to ask me about what really happened, but I was too down to give a response. Stephanie Brown. That's the principal's voice from the school speaker. "You're wanted in my office now." I stood up from my seat. It looked like the whole world was upon my head. I wanted to melt down. I dragged my feet to the principal's office. My mom and dad were already in his office. He asked me what really happened. I was too ashamed to say anything. My dad couldn't look at my face, and my mom was sobbing silently. The principal asked me to go to the reception. A few minutes later, my parents came out and said to me, "You've been expelled, let's go home." I busted into tears. That was the quietest day in our home. My dad is naturally reticent, but my mom was gratuitously silent. I was in my room with my head deep in the soft pillow crying softly. A few hours later, my parents came in with 2 slices of bread, a plate of fried eggs, and a glass of juice. They sat beside me on the bed, and I could feel Mom rocking my leg. I sat down with my head bowed in shame. They comforted me before my dad revealed that he got a gig in LA and would take the chance. My mom went along with the plan. Deep in my thought, I was visualizing how I was going to get my revenge at Truce. I really don't want to leave, not now. My friends were the best. I didn't want to be separated from them, but I understood that decision was difficult for my parents. They took it because of me. I appreciated their effort. Everyone went along with the idea of leaving everything behind. Later in the evening, my friends came to our place. I updated them. They were initially reluctant. Soon they found out it was for the best. Everyone saw that as a good plan except me. I wanted to get revenge on my mess. They quickly jumped into helping me pack my stuff and assisted my parents in a few rounds. We resumed the journey very early the following day. None of our neighbors was out. I am sure my dad couldn't see the road clearly, but it was his braveness for me. We got to lie before none, moved into our new apartment, and everyone opened a new chapter in their lives. All this just because of my foolishness. My mom got me registered in a new school. The process was easy. I had good grades, and my viral video hadn't reached LA yet. That was a significant relief. I started attending class with the immediate effect of forgetting the past as soon as possible. I was a loner for the first few weeks because I didn't know who to trust anymore. Everyone tried associating themselves with the newbie, but I think I was getting better at avoiding people. That was my newest superpower. Then Abby came into the picture. She had been sitting behind me all semester, and I didn't even notice her. Wow. This girl is good. She talked to no one, and no one talked back to her. She is always reading a novel or writing something no one cared about except her. Her diary is filled with posters of aliens and spaceships. Weird, right? Help me pick my pen. It is between your legs. That voice was new. I never perceived that, and it was 3 months I resumed. I looked back. It was Abby. Babe, she's like an angel. Her lips were white, and the wet lips melted perfectly on them. I was still fantasizing about her when I heard, "Will you please help me with the pen?" "Oh, I'm sorry," I replied. "Here it is." She then raised her eyelid, trying to make me look back. Looking at me from the opposite direction was the class nerd, Jude. Jude is cute. He has a baby face and is the best student in class, but he is not sporty. This boy can't even ride a bicycle, nerd. Abby continued, "He has been looking at you since the professor introduced you to the class. I think he's into you." Why is Abby talking to me? This is strange. I would have been comfortable with this supposed discussion, but he'll be saying anything to me. She introduced me to a stalker. I took it as a setup, faced front, and gave Jude a weird face. Jude looked away with a smile on his face. It was as if his mission was accomplished. I finally noticed him. I felt unsafe and more comfortable. I rushed out to the restroom to calm myself a bit. I entered the classroom and couldn't wait for the bell. Immediately, I heard it. I carried my bag and disappeared from the premises. The following day at school, I got my stuff from my locker, and Jude came by trying to initiate some conversation. I didn't respond to his calls, though he sounded soft. I could pick he couldn't hurt a fly by nay, not him, not now, and not anytime soon. Abby whispered to my ear in the class, "Give him a chance, you won't regret it this time, trust me." I looked back in awe. Did she know about it? Was she there? I felt unsecured. I understand how people that had been treated bitterly act, and I could tell you were once a victim, the soft voice continued whispering. I sighed with relief. At least she didn't know about it, I said to myself. What did you care? I whispered back. She smiled and replied, "Here he comes." I turned around and lo, Jude. "Hi, Abby," he greeted. "You good?" Abby responded. I think these two know themselves a lot. I later found out that they are twins, and my name is the leading topic in their house. Jude started with his speech. He wasn't even concentrating. My eyes were locked on his. "Can you hear me?" Jude asked sharply. "Yes," I responded in an apt. "Will you go watch a movie with me tomorrow night and maybe get a drink when returning?" "Is that a date?" I asked in return. "I guessed," he said with a tone of doubt. "Okay, this once," I replied. I couldn't believe I had just said that. That slip of tongue gave me the sweetest experience to date. After the movie night, we started going out. My parents knew about him, and they were happy that I had moved on. I couldn't believe myself, I was reborn. Jude brought me back to life. Unlike Truce, my parents were delighted with my relationship with Jude. God, this guy is well-cultured, a very respectful kid. His weird twin sister became my best and only friend in school. Babe, this girl can talk, only when she's not in the class. I found out she's the lousy type, and Jude is the timid one. That is the opposite in school. Their father works at NASA, that explained the alien and spaceship posters on Abby's diary. Their mom sells flowers in a plant store. Those two are really close, they shared everything without a tip of jealousy. They even shared my time among themselves. They made La my new home. My relationship with Jude was perfect, but we haven't gotten intimate yet. Jude said he could wait. And I really love this guy, but Truce's memory was well seated in my cerebrum. I could recall everything as if it was yesterday. Over a year now, my relationship with Jude Wilson was more pleasant than the early morning sun. I could believe what was happening, it was as if I was in a dreamland. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson are the best. They treat me as one of their own. Brad was the naughty little brother, he is tough to please, I think we will get along. Brad is addicted to his video game. I deduce that it might be natural to him that the real life. Unlike my parents, the Wilsons are very predictable. Mrs. Wilson is always available, but Mr. Wilson barely comes home. Their stamina is kind of regular, everyone knows what to do with time. Everything with the Wilsons is routine, I like this home, and I fit in comfortably. Recently, my parents even allowed me to spend weeks with the Wilsons. It is a home away from home. The Wilsons are not as boring as they look, this person can party, they love traveling and even have movie nights every Friday. We are now in our finals, prom is in a few weeks. Jude seems to be very busy recently. He is the valedictorian, and as the school president, he is planning the best prom yet. Abby wasn't helping her twin brother. I wasn't surprised, she's good at ignoring people, and Jude was okay with it too. I really miss Jude. This is the first time in a long time Jude wasn't really available, but Abby was making up for his brother. I had plans too. My mom and I had been visiting wear stores and boutiques. As the first lady of the prom night, I ought to look my best. I didn't really know my mom was good at selecting dresses until now. All my life, she had been wearing office wears. Initially, I didn't trust her choice, but in time, babe, mom was good. She got me new pairs of heels. I appreciated her, and I gave her arguably the longest hug I have given her. She smiled in satisfaction. Tonight is the prom. Everything was going on fine with me, Jude, Abby, and my parents. Jude called me as usual. I understood he was trying to make up for his absence, but the information was different this time. He said he had provided an Uber for the night. That was thoughtful of him. I informed my dad about the news since he promised me the day before to transport me to the prom center. My dad was okay with it, and he wished me good luck. Braun. That was the doorbell. My mom got the door. Baby, it is Jude, she shouted. I came down the stairs. I was walking like an angel. I wasn't perfect with heels, but try not to rush myself. Jude was in his tuxedo, he looked up to take his queen. He was smiling, and I was smiling. My dad looked so pleased, and my mom joined her hands together, raised towards her chin. I am not getting married yet, I snapped at the duo. I met up with Jude at the end of the stairs. Jude whispered, I love you, beauty. I waved my hands at my parents as we walked towards the black SUV parked in front of the lawn. The driver was in a black suit. The driver turned, he was wearing a black sunglass. The face looked familiar, but how did I know a bearded young man? The driver removed his glasses, and lo, it was Truce. Truce. I can't believe myself. I ran into the house and straight to my room upstairs. What should I have done? My old boyfriend, who tarnished my image, is here to pick me on my prom night. Should I go in the Uber or stay home? What did you think? What did you think? What did you think?
Hi, I'm Mira. My boyfriend, Lopez, and I are the perfect match for each other. We have our ups and downs, but beyond that, we are good for each other. We love mysteries and games, and that was why we decided to stay at the Albertsons, Lopez's parents' beach house in Miami, before it is placed for sale. What we didn't realize was that we have to grow up. At the beach house, we had so much fun as usual. It was going as we had planned until we found this old safe. All we could see were pictures and nothing else. But these pictures isn't what we were expecting in the old crooked safe. We wanted more. But all we could lay our hands on were these old pictures. Do they worth the effort? You're about to find out. I, Bruno, my baby brother, and my papa live in the countryside. My mum died during Bruno's labor. It has then been my duty to take care of him. I was his mother figure. My father hadn't considered remarrying since then. I think he had considered it, but he might be scared of how I would react. But deeply, I don't care. My father works with a security agency at a multinational company not far away from home. Due to the nature of his job, he stays at work at night. So, when I was young, I spent most of the time with the Albertsons, our neighbors. Initially, Lopez and I were not on talking terms. I did visit the Albertsons' residence to play with Rodrigo, my only friend. People might think we might end up dating, but we are too close to be dating. Rodrigo is my very good friend. We planned everything together. We never made any decision behind each other. As kids, we had our own rules and codes which were still effective until recently. We needed to grow up. Rodrigo was a smart kid and his vision was to become a scientist. He got us into a lot of trouble with his little science projects. Lopez was quite older than us. He never participated in our games, and it looked like he and his little brother aren't close. Not a bit. They did fight over every little thing. Lopez was 2 years our senior, and he only talked with people of his caliber. I looked older than his age, and he is a lot mature, but he easily gets himself into conflict. I didn't like him at all, and Rodrigo did tell me a lot about him. I knew I sickened him, and he disgusted me too. Lopez wasn't as smart as his little brother, which made him get some harsh responses from his parents. But he is good at playing football. The coach once told the school that he had a great future ahead of him if he keep up the pace. We always anticipate a holiday. The Albertsons and I spend the holiday at their beach house in Miami. My father would take Bruno to Aunt Nina's to spend the break. At the beach house, we had more space for our little experiment, and it was convenient to blow things up. Lopez did go to the beach to party. He was never at home. Mr. and Mrs. Albertson tried varieties of things. They tried yoga and some weird religious practices. Lopez and I wondered how they enjoyed those things. The only thing they did that we are fans of is the different types of cocktails they made. As kids, we would take some sips whenever the duo wasn't looking. Mrs. Albertson was a very good cook. She loves to bake as well. She made her recipes. I did assist her in the kitchen. During those times, we did have a heart-to-heart discussion. The beach house was our haven. Lopez and I started tying knots when Rodrigo and I were in grade 10 and Lopez was in his finals. I was at their place that afternoon to see Rodrigo. I went to Rodrigo's room, but he wasn't there. I looked around the house but could not find Rodrigo. I then decided to go check for him in the backyard. As I opened the door to the backyard, I was Lopez swimming in the swimming pool. He was flabbergasted to see me. I didn't notice a thing until I saw him covering his rear with his 2 hands. He asked me to turn around, and I obeyed immediately. "What are you looking for?" he asked with a shaky voice. "I am here looking for Rodrigo. I didn't know you would be here," I responded. "As you can see, Rodrigo isn't home," he rejoined. I was about to leave the backyard when he called on me. "Please help me with my underpants that is on the line," he requested of me. I got the underpants, trying my possible best to look back. I threw the underpants, but my aim was poor. It fell in the water. Lopez had to swim to get it. The underpants were wet, but he didn't have any other choice but to wear them like that. I was still standing with my back turned towards the Lopez and my right hands on my face. He came out of the pool and tapped me. I was startled and looked at him. He is a tall and well-built young man. "Thank you," he said, pointing to the wet underpants. "I am sorry," I responded. He left me behind and found his way to the main building. That wasn't surprising. He does that a lot. Since Lopez wasn't home, I left the Albertsons' residence. I texted Rodrigo, who didn't reply to my message. I should be worried because that would be the first time he would ever go out without telling me first, but the scene with Lopez was on my mind. I couldn't get it off my mind. Rodrigo called me later and apologized. I wasn't interested in his plea. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Lopez. I couldn't believe that I was smiling. Am I in love with Lopez? No, this can't be happening. Even if I showed my advances, Lopez would not even look at my side. And if he does, Rodrigo might not talk to me again for having intimate affairs with his brother. And I can't afford to lose Rodrigo. I had spent my whole life with Rodrigo. Getting separated from him would hurt both of us. I don't want to be the cause of our parting. I tried to get Lopez off my mind by spending the night talking about life with Papa. I slept off after a few hours discussing life in Mexico. From that moment henceforth, I tried showing my intentions to Lopez. He wasn't even looking at my side. Rodrigo may have noticed because he had been acting kind of funny, but he didn't say anything. After several trials, he took up the courage to ask him out physically. He just looked at me and walked away, leaving me standing. It was as if I was not there. From that day on, he would just smile whenever he set his eyes on me. Was he impressed, or he was making fun of me? Lopez and his classmates were preparing for their prom, and my class was also trying to create an event for the end of the year. I and Rodrigo were also busy trying to pull stuff. All our effort were futile since all Rodrigo could pull was not social enough. Eventually, my class settled for a kissing booth. Lopez was nowhere to be found. I think he wanted to look best for his prom. The day of the prom had come. I persuaded Rodrigo to attend so that I could see the graduating boy. Rodrigo was reluctant at first but obeyed our rule number 5. Do not let down your bestie's request. At the hall, Lopez's classmate came in twos, male and female except for Lopez. He was the only single guy at the party. I felt sorry for him, but my hands are tied. For the first time in a long time, he recognized us. He kept waving his hands at us at every opportunity. He took some photos with us. That night, Lopez and Rodrigo had their first brother thing. They had several shots, joked, and played some manly games. Eventually, the two of them got drunk. I had to help the two brothers home. It wasn't easy. I got a taxi and got them home safe. At their place, I assisted Rodrigo to his room first. The boy slept off immediately. I came down to help Lopez to his room. Lopez was so drunk that he was just speaking gibberish. He laughed more often. We eventually made it to his bed. I dropped him. As I was about to take my leave, he held my hand and murmured some words which I didn't understand. I successfully left his room. I called Papa, telling him I won't be coming home that night. He was fine with it. I made myself comfortable on the sofa. I didn't know when I slept off. The next morning, Lopez was the one to wake me up. "Thank you for yesterday," he said as he grinned. Before I could say "you're welcome," he left for the swimming pool in their backyard. Rodrigo followed him. He was still hanging over the previous night's drunkenness. He sat beside me on the sofa, crossed his hand around my neck. "I love you," he said. "You will forever be my best friend." Oh, what a relief. I can't imagine dating Rodrigo. After skipping through various TV channels, he eventually decided to join his brother at the swimming pool. Mrs. Albertson came downstairs, greeted me, and headed straight to the kitchen. I followed her immediately. We chatted a little as we cooked for the boys. Most of the discussion that day was about boys. I didn't feel comfortable, but I enjoyed it. Mrs. Albertson had been the closest thing I had to a mother since my mum died from Bruno's labor. She is always there for me. After the cooking, I summoned the courage to join the boys at the poolside. To my surprise, the two boys were having fun. Wow, that was amazing. I stood at the poolside, trying to join in the ongoing moment, unknowing to me. Rodrigo pulled me into the pool. My dress got wet, but I love it too. It was a day I would never forget. After the whole fun, Mrs. Albertson served us our meal. Everyone ate and Lopez joined in our stupid games. He was not good at following rules. He cheated his ways to victory every time, but we didn't care. It was fun for us. Bruno came looking for me, but instead of telling Papa had called upon me, he made himself at home and started playing video games. The day was fun. Bruno and I got home later that evening. Papa wasn't home, but he left a letter behind. He had gone for his security duties. I cooked before leaving. We served ourselves, had a little of siblings jiffy before going to bed. On my bed, I was exultant. I took my phone and started chatting with Rodrigo. We chat for quite a time before saying our goodbyes. I slept off instantly. I was very tired from the day's activities. After an incredible weekend, it was time to prepare for the kissing booth. My class pulls this off. Rodrigo got a kiss from her dream girl, Lara. It seemed she also had a crush on the guy. I was quite jealous. All my classmates had been paired with their secret lovers. It was my time to receive the surprise kiss. I was blindfolded and I was meant to wait. I waited longer than usual. I was about to lose hope when someone drew my head closer to give me a passionate kiss. This is surely Rodrigo, I said to myself. I was so thankful then I remembered Rodrigo had never kissed before. He can't be this good, and more so this fellow was quite sporty. Unlike my Rodrigo. I took of the fold and lo, it was Lopez. Everyone was cheering us up. I caught the big fish. A graduating student gave me a surprise kiss. After the passionate kiss, Lopez then asked me, "Will you be my girlfriend?" I wanted to say yes, but when I looked at the audience, Rodrigo is gone. And Lara shrugged, realizing I was looking for Rodrigo. I couldn't say yes, even though I wanted to. I left at once looking for Rodrigo. I eventually found Rodrigo alone at the cafeteria. I guessed he wasn't too happy with the show. I can't blame you. I would have done the same thing if I was to be in his shoes. I sat beside him. We didn't speak for a while. Then I said, "Rule number 13, be happy for each other no matter the situation." He looked at me in dismay and there was silence once more. Finally, he spoke. "This isn't right," he said. "You can't be in an affair with my brother. It is going to affect our friendship. It is going to be weird seeing for kiss my brother while we sit side by side. I thought he was your big brother too." He kept talking. I thought he wasn't going to stop and I would just stay muted and listen to him all night. Then I heard, "Don't you have anything to say?" Oh, finally, it is my time to say something, but there is nothing for me to say. I summoned some courage and told him that I guess Lopez likes me. "Do you like him?" he revolted. I think I responded slimily. "Since when has this been going on?" he asked once more. "Tonight," I answered. He looked at my face and said, "I am happy for you, but you should have told me earlier. Let's go celebrate." Lippy. I almost jumped off my feet. But I kept cool. On our way back to where the event was taking place, we met Lara, who was looking around for her newly found boyfriend. Lara was the shy one and she barely talked. But I guessed, the two are united by science. Those are the best two in the class. Funny enough, they don't compete. Rodrigo introduced Lara to me as if we had never met before. "Lara, this is Mira, my best friend, and Mira, this is Lara, my girlfriend." Lara looked at him in awe while I laughed. I couldn't believe what I just heard. Lara rested on him and he crossed his hand around her neck. While that was going on, Lopez showed. He smiled at his little brother, who could not pretend he is disappointed. Then he came for me. He took me by the hand and said, "Hi guys, who cares for some drink?" "Don't get me drunk like the last time," exclaimed Rodrigo. Things were going on fine between us until it was time for Lopez to go to college. There was this unhappiness within me. Rodrigo didn't care. He spent most of his time with Lara now. I am happy for them. But it was my time to be lonely. Lopez promised me he would call every day. I pretended to be fine with the suggestion, but I would miss my newly found soulmate. As promised, Lopez keeps the tab every day. It has now become a routine. We always talked about how we spent our days. He talked about his newly found friends. Lopez's new clique is made up of 3 other boys and a girl. I requested for their picture, which he sent without asking him twice. There I saw Happy. You can't believe it. If Happy had competed for Ms. World, she would have won. She's the most beautiful creature I had set my eyes on in the last 17 years of my life. I wouldn't have suspected anything if the lady was sitting a yard away from my Lopez. But instead, she was sitting right next to him with her hands all over Lopez. I started getting suspicious of Lopez. Who would want to start honestly with a high school guy when you have a beautiful college girl within your reach? No one, and this time, not even Lopez would. I asked him who she was. He said they're just friends. I wanted to believe him, but I didn't believe him. Who would have believed such things? I called him a liar and stopped talking to him. I called and texted, but I didn't respond. Time had passed. Rodrigo and Lara are doing very fine. Lopez and I had not talked for a while now. We are now in our finals. It was time for our prom. Being single felt weird. Lopez and Lara had gotten admission into the same college. I was still keeping my admission on hold. I wanted to be a lawyer, not a science guru like those two. And our rule number 4 is to attend the same college. I wanted to go to the same college as Rodrigo, who had been adamant about it, but I have a career to pursue myself. I had to lie to him that I had chosen the same college as his. He was very happy that he hugged me. I told him not to tell anyone yet since I want to surprise others. It didn't make sense to him, but he obliged. The other college is the same as Lopez. I think a little part of me was still with him. Prom was fast approaching. I had a dance competition to perform in. I had been paired with Wilson. Wilson was really good. I would have loved to partner with Rodrigo, but he had been his usual self since he met Lara. We still talked, but not as we used to. So, I had to settle for Wilson. Wilson seemed cool, and there was nothing between us. Little did I know that this guy really liked me, or he might just be infatuated. At the dance competition, we were the last to be called upon. Towards the end of our performance, the audience had started applauding us. After the last move, Wilson kissed me. I played along because I didn't want to embarrass him on stage. While I was deep in the kiss, I saw a figure standing up from the stands and left. I recognized that person. That was Lopez for sure. I rushed up the presentation and ran after him. I looked everywhere but could not find him. Then hello. A female voice from behind said. I looked back. It was Happy. So, Lopez came from my presentation with her little girlfriend. I looked at her as if she fell in a pit filled with swine shit. To my surprise, she didn't react at all. She smiled at me and stretched his hand for a handshake. We shook hands and she requested of me if we could talk. Yes, I said reluctantly. I wasn't comfortable with the discussion because she was speaking to me as if she was my elder sister. Then she asked the big question. Have you moved on? I looked at her face. We are here today because Lopez wanted me to see her little girlfriend that stopped talking to him because of me. Lopez had said a lot about you and I wanted to see it for myself. I was disappointed in myself. I hadn't moved on, I replied. The guy, Wilson, we aren't dating. It was part of the performance. To kiss, she exclaimed. Wilson added, we didn't practice that, I replied. Where is Lopez? I asked her in quite a hurry. I don't know, she replied. I don't know anywhere here. Do you mind taking me around? We stood up and took a walk. Even though we came first, I missed the award presentation. I didn't care anymore. I wanted to reconcile with Lopez as soon as possible. We ended up at a bar. She demanded we take a few shots. I couldn't decline. We started with dry gin till we get to vodka. This girl is good. If addiction is a polite word, I would have used it, but it isn't. We competed and I lost on every count. We built a close relationship within hours. While we are having a splendid time, Rodrigo, Lara, and Lopez came by. Lara and Rodrigo came close while Lopez stayed in a distance. I guessed he was still angry after the show I made. I walked towards him, gave him a peck and whispered in his ears, there is nothing between me and that guy. He said, if I see that guy, I promised, I am going to punch him in the face. I love you, I replied instead. He grinned as I dragged him towards the others. We had a night of our lives. Happy left the next morning. Guessed Lopez would be staying home for Christmas. We were enjoying the break. I and Lopez finally had our intimate moment. The young man is good. I stayed in his place for a week straight. This Christmas, Bruno will be staying at home. He is now 10. He told Papa that he is old enough. He wanted to go camping with his best friend, a girl. Papa was fine with it. I got suspicious, but did not need my advice on this one. I got home after a week. I missed my little brother. I wanted to see how he was doing. The little guy didn't need me around anymore. He was doing the cooking, washing, and setting the house all by himself. I asked him how he pulled this off, all by himself. He told me that when I was not at home, Papa had been seeing a nice lady. She helped a lot at home and she taught me some things. Papa was going to ask you if he should propose to her, he continued. There was this mixed feeling within me. I was happy for him, but introducing a new person to the family feels weird. Bruno was fine with this. I would soon be going to college. Someone has to take care of Bruno while I am away. I sighed. The house looked different. I couldn't find things where I had known them to be. My time in this house is almost over, I guessed. I got to the cabinet to get myself something to eat. I was about to sit down and grab the remote when Papa showed up. He settled down a while from the night's job before initiating a discussion on the new lady. Her name is Doris, he mentioned. She is a nice lady. He continued. I wasn't comfortable discussing my father's wife to be with him. He did all the talking. He told him he would be going on a date with her, where he would propose to her. Can I go ahead? He asked. Yes, of course, if you like her. Moreover, Bruno does, I replied. I eventually found a good reason to flee. The next morning I came back home. No one was home except for Doris. I was shocked, so she had started sleeping over. She introduced herself and we exchanged regards. She was quite nice as aforementioned by Bruno. Although there was this weird silence in the house, we tried to converse a little. While we were both enjoying the TV program, Papa showed up in a new coat. He said he and Doris are going on a date. As he was about to leave, he asked me to wish them luck. Good luck and have fun, I responded. Doris waved and grinned at me as the duo left for their date. I was about to rest when I received Rodrigo's message. It reads, "We are off to the beach house. Are you in?" This was the perfect excuse I needed to provide privacy from my dad and his new butterfly. I quickly got some stuff packed in a small box, dropped a note for Bruno to say goodbye, and left the house. The Albertsons wanted to put the beach house on sale since they would be retiring soon and all their kids will be going to college. No one would be visiting the beach house anymore. Lopez suggested we had a meeting with them. At the meeting, the two made known their plans. Rodrigo and Lopez were able to convince them. They said their parents should permit us to stay for a while. During the stay at the place, we would take care of the place and make it perfect for sale to attract wealthy buyers. Mr. and Mrs. Albertson agreed to it. We enjoyed our stay at the beach house. Rodrigo and I unraveled all we had done when we were kids while Lopez and I made love at night. Laura also came to visit. We all joined the big party at the beach. Wilson also came around. This is weird. Lopez suspected I was the one who invited him. I told him I was not the one. Things got on the tension between Lopez and Wilson. I had to beg Wilson to leave, even though it was against his will. He left. Again there was peace. After a while, we were tired of fun as we prepared for college and make the house ready for sale. Laura had left for his parents' place. Papa does call sometimes. He is doing fine with Doris and Bruno was enjoying himself. While we were arranging the house, we saw an old safe. Lopez carried it out. It was made of metal and it had a lock. Rodrigo and Lopez tried calling their parents as regards the sacred old safe. They didn't say. They concluded that it might be there before the Albertsons bought the beach house. This news spurs the two brothers to make a heist, their first to be precise. They tried cutting off the lock but to no avail. Rodrigo was tired of the stress, while Lopez was angry about him unable to open the safe. They later found out that what was in will remain in, if they tried any more stupid things. After thorough attempts, they decided to get a lock specialist. On the day of the heist, the lock specialist came. He didn't look like someone that could pull such a thing. He was just a nerd. She even came along with a Scotch bag. At first we thought he had his tools in the bag, but later we found out the bag was empty. He just loves carrying that bag. He started tending to the safe. The guy is good. He opened the safe just within 5 minutes. We expected to see some antiques, cash or precious stones. The lock guy opened the safe and hissed. He adjusted his glasses and went to Lopez to collect his cash. He left immediately. I guessed he was disappointed. Lopez and Rodrigo rushed to the safe to open it. "What is this?" shouted Lopez. "Our childhood photos. Is this a joke?" Rodrigo went forward and started checking through the pictures. He was enjoying himself. I moved forward and joined him. We both enjoyed the pictures. We made jest over it. It was fun for us, but it wasn't for Lopez. He was angry because he just wasted some cash on an old safe filled with memories. We are happy after this event. We placed the house on sale, and we had concluded to move on. Rodrigo and Lara moved forward with their school, while I followed Lopez to his college. It was a happy ending for everyone and we realized we needed to move on. I reunited with Happy and Lopez introduced me to the rest of the crew. Lopez had learned to control his anger issue. Today, we still joke about the old safe, The mystery is that, who kept our childhood photos in a safe and locked them? That we don't know. All we knew was that we had beautiful childhood that we can't return to anymore. So sad, but we have to grow up. We have to grow up. Evan sat at the desk that was at the back of the class. No student was sitting beside or close to Evan. He just sat down on his own. He deliberately sat there because he was not interested in what Mr. Mike was teaching. He always finds her class very boring. If Evan had the chance, he would not even attend Mr. Mike's class. After Mr. Mike finished writing on the board, he turned to the class to explain what he wrote. But before the explanation of the note, he has a new student in his class that he wants to introduce. Mr. Mike told the class to listen up. He said he wants all of them to meet Leah. He told them Leah is a new student who just joined their school. He told them Edward came from New York. Evan and the whole class looked up at the new student who was standing close to Mr. Mike. When Mr. Mike noticed that he had the attention of all the students, he told me to introduce myself to the class. For a few seconds, I couldn't talk because I was shy. Mr. Mike told me that I have to be bold and courageous. After much persuasion from Mr. Mike, I began to introduce myself. I am 18 years old. I was born and raised in New York. I have a brother and a sister who are both in college. I came here because my father was transferred to this city, so we had to leave New York. I didn't want to leave New York, but since my parents were leaving, I had no option but to follow them. Mr. Mike told me that I will enjoy my stay in the school. He told me that many students in the school came from other states. After the introduction, Mr. Mike told me to find a seat. I looked everywhere but every seat had a student sitting on it. The only vacant seat was Evan's seat. Mr. Mike told me to go and sit close to Evan's. When I was making my way to the seat, some students were nodding in disapproval. They didn't want me to sit close to Evan, but there was no empty desk, so I had no choice but to sit close to Evan. When I sat close to Evan, I asked him why he was sitting alone. He said he likes sitting alone. He said students don't like sitting close to him because he likes sitting at the back. As soon as Leah took her seat, Mr. Mike started the explanation of the note that was on the board. After some hours, the school timekeeper ranged the bell for recess. Evan took his jacket and walked out of the class. As he was walking, he heard someone calling his name. He looked back and saw me. He was surprised to hear me calling his name. He walked back to where I was standing to listen to what I had to say. I told him that I just wanted to let him know that if everyone in the class decides not to sit close to him, I will continue to sit close to him. Evan was surprised that someone could show him love in a class that people used to stay away from him. He was very happy to hear what I said to the extent that he pleaded with me that I should follow him to the school restaurant. I obliged. Evan and I went to the school restaurant and ate together. After 45 minutes, the bell was rung for the end of the recess. When Evan returned to class, he noticed that everybody in the class was looking at him. They were surprised how quickly he has bonded with Leah. Everybody in the class knew Evan as someone that was very quiet and reserved. They know him as someone that hardly talks in class. How he was able to quickly form a bond with a new student remained a mystery to them. A few minutes to the end of the day activities, Mr. Mike came to the class and informed us that the next day is Parents' Convention Day. He told us that our parents to attend the convention. He told us that any student that does not have any representative at the convention will be punished according to the constitution of the school. After disseminating the information, he told us that we can start going to our houses. When we went out of the class, Evan walked up to me. He asked me if my parents were going to attend the parents' convention. I told him that I was not sure if my parents were going to attend the convention, because I am not sure if they were aware. Evan said that is true. I told Evans that I will inform my parents when I get home. I told him that their attendance at the convention will be based on their availability the next day. I asked Evan if his parents were going to attend the convention. Evan said he is sure that his parent will attend the convention, because they have been told since 7 days ago. He said his parent had no excuse. I told Evans that I will be happy if Evan's parents show up because she will like to meet them. Evan promised to introduce me to his parents if they show up at the convention. Evan also said he will like to meet my parents if they show up at the parents' convention. I told him that I will personally introduce him to my parents if they eventually show up at the convention. Evan and I continued our conversation until we got to the motor park where we were to board the bus that will take us to our houses. I have had a great day with you, Evan said. Me too. I replied. We waved one other goodbye and each one of us entered different buses. When I got home, I told my parent that my school was going to hold a parent convention the next day, and the school told us that every student must be represented. My father said he doesn't know about it and he is not sure if he will be able to attend. I was not happy with my father's decision. I started persuading my father. I reminded him that I am a new student in the school and I do not want to be punished. I told my father that I don't want to set a bad record too. After much persuasion, my parents agreed that they will attend the convention. I jumped up in happiness and embraced my parents. I was very happy because I knew that I will be able to introduce my parents to Evan. The next day, I woke up very early and immediately went to the bathroom. I took my bath very quickly and put on my school uniform. When my father woke up, he was very surprised to see me in my school uniform as early as 6 a.m. "Why are you dressed up so quickly?" my father asked. I told him I woke up very early and I decided to get myself ready for school since I do not have any house chores to do. My father told me that I have to wait for him and my mother to take their bath. He said he will drive me to school himself. After about an hour, my parents were ready. My father called me from my room and told me to meet him in the car. I entered the car with my parents, and we drove off. 15 minutes later, we arrived at my school. The school security men led my parents to the convention ground while I was told to go to my class. When I entered the class, I met Evan at his usual seat. I went to Evan and greeted him. Evan responded and he noticed a great smile on my face. Evan asked me the reason for the smile. I told him that I was smiling because I was able to persuade my parents to attend the convention. On hearing that, Evan smiled also. I asked Evan if his parents were able to attend too. Evan said his parents were already at the convention ground. The convention lasted for 2 hours. Parents were briefed about their children's academic performance, and many other things. When the convention ended, we were allowed to go and see our parents for a few minutes. I took Evan to my parents. I told my parents that Evan is my classmate. I explained how Evan helped me settle down on my first day in school to my parents. My parents praised Evan and advised him to face his academics squarely and come out in flying colors. They told him he is free to visit me at our house whenever he wishes. Evan and I immediately left and ran to where Evan's parents were standing. Evan introduced me to his parents and told them how friendly I was. He told them how I accepted to sit close to him in class when everyone else didn't want to sit close to him. Evan's parents appreciated me and advised me to be serious with my academics. Evan and I introduced our parents to themselves. After the introduction, our parents left and Evan and I walked back to our class. Our friendship continued to grow stronger. We became very close friends and we began to do everything together. Everybody in the school noticed how close Evan and I were. As days went by, Evan and I began to generate emotional feelings for each other, but none of us dared to express our feelings. My birthday was fast approaching, and I told Evan that I will want him to celebrate my birthday with me. I told him my friend Aurora will also join us in the celebration. I told him that the birthday celebration will hold in a public mall. I told him that my parents will be there too. On the day of my birthday, I called Evan to meet me at St. George Mall. I told him that my parents, Aurora and I will join him soon. Evan left his house and headed to St. George Mall. When he arrived at the mall, we were already there waiting for him. We welcomed him and he took his seat. There was a lot of food and drinks to eat. While we were eating, Evan and I couldn't take our eyes off each other. A few minutes after, I excused herself. I told them that I want to use the bathroom. When I entered the bathroom, I locked the door. After easing myself, I could not open the door because it was locked. I started screaming for help, but there was no help in sight. After waiting for minutes for me to return and I did not, Evan stood up to check up on me. When he got to the bathroom area, he started calling my name. I quickly replied as I was happy that help was in sight. "Where are you?" Evan asked. "I am in the bathroom. I have been trying to open the door, but it seems the door is locked." Evan came to the bathroom door and helped me open it. "Thank you very much," I said. I told him that I have been stuck in the bathroom since I left them. I hugged Evan passionately and kissed him. Evan kissed me back. It seems like the perfect opportunity, that both of us to have some intimate kissing. The kissing continued to the extent that we had to lock the door again so that passers-by would not see us. When my parents waited for some time without seeing Evan and me, they sent Aurora to go and check upon us. When she got in front of the bathroom, she heard whispering in the bathroom. She thought something was going on in the bathroom, so she quickly returned. When my parents asked about Evan and me, she told them that I was still in the bathroom while Evan is chatting with his old-time friend he met at the mall. We continued the sex till they both came. We quickly cleaned up and joined the rest of the people that have been waiting for us. I thought the outing was a perfect opportunity to know more about Evan. Most of the talk we usually had in school was not too deep. I didn't know about Evan's family background even though I have met his parents. I don't know his hobbies, his likes and dislikes, and many other things. So tell me about your family, I asked. I have a brother and a sister. Both of them are in college. My brother is studying physics while my sister is studying statistics. My brother is in his 3rd year in college, while my sister is in her 1st year. My father works as a doctor while my mother is a pharmacist. That's impressive, I said. So you are from a family of medical personnel. Tell me about your family too, Evan said. I have 2 brothers. Both of them are out of college. My elder brother studied chemistry while my immediate brother studied economics. My father and my mother are lawyers. Oh, good. So you are from a family of legal practitioners. I am sure you are also considering becoming a lawyer, Evan said. Maybe, Leah said. So tell me what your hobbies are. I want to know them, Leah asked. My hobbies are watching football, traveling, reading, and watching movies. You said you like watching football. Which football team is your favorite? Leah asked. I love many teams, but Real Madrid is my favorite. I love Real Madrid Football Club because of Cristiano Ronaldo. He is a very good player and a great goal scorer. I will name my male child after him because of the love I have for him. He is the reason Real Madrid won 3 Champions League consecutively. It is a feat that no other club has ever achieved. So you said you love reading too. So tell me the types of books you have read. Evan said I have read many books. The books I love reading most are comics and sports books. I love sports books because they educate me on the current news in sports. I also love comic books because they make me laugh. I love reading comic books when I am alone and bored. They usually make me laugh and make me forget that I am alone. They help me cope with boredom. Most times, I am always at home alone when I leave school. So I need something that will chase boredom away. That was what led me to comic books, and I have become a fan since then. So tell me about the types of books you like to read, Evan asked. Leah said I love romantic books. I love a book that is filled with romance. I know you are romantic, Evan said. So tell me about your type of movies, Lisa asked. Evan replied by saying I like comedy movies. I loved movies that will make me laugh and forget what I am going through at that particular time. So tell me about the types of your movie too, Leah asked. Leah replied by saying I love romantic movies the same way I love romantic books. I am not a big fan of romantic movies because they make me emotional. Most times the movies are made excessively long so that viewers can continue watching them. I don't like them because the movies are designed to make people attached to them. If you start watching it, you wouldn't want to stop, and that's the way the movies are designed. As for me, I prefer comic movies that will make me laugh and forget whatever I am going through. You said you love listening to music, so let us talk about music, Leah said. Tell me the types of songs you listen to and your favorite artists. I am a big fan of R&B songs. I love R&B songs because they usually have a lot of strong lyrics. So tell me who your favorite artists are in the R&B category. Evan replied by saying I follow a lot of artists in the R&B category. I love almost all of them, Leah said. Even if you love all of them, there are 1 or 2 of them that you will love more than others. Yes, that is true, Evan said. I think I love R. Kelly and Usher. Good, Leah said. Now, you have to list at least 15 songs of your favorites before I can agree that you are a big R&B fan. Okay, I agree. Let me begin with R. Kelly. Some of his songs that I know are I Believe I Can Fly, The Same Girl, It Seems That You Are Ready, I'm a Flirt, Down Low, Trapped in the Closet, If I Could Turn Back the Hands of Time, Fiesta, Sex Planet, I Wish. You Remind Me of Something and Half on a Baby. Now, let me move to Usher, Evan said. Some of his songs that I know are Yeah, My Boo, DJ Got Us Falling in Love. I Don't Mind, OMG, You Got It Bad, You Remind Me. Love in This Club, Confessions, Nice and Slow. Don't Waste My Time, No Limit, Lovers and Friends. You Don't Have to Call. And Bad Habits. Leah said, now I agree that you are a big fan of R&B. Evan looked at Leah and laughed. Now, tell me about your favorite artist too, Evan asked. As for me, I am a big fan of Alicia Keys and Justin Bieber, Leah said. I love their songs so much. They always inspire me with their songs. Just like you said, it is your dream to watch a football match in Santiago. It is also my dream to meet Alicia Keys, Beyoncé, and Justin Bieber in person. Evan laughed and said, I know you will meet them soon. I am also giving you the assignment you gave me, Evan told Leah. You are also going to mention 15 of Alicia Keys, Beyoncé, and Justin Bieber's songs for me to accept that you are a big fan of them. Leah laughed and said, I accept the challenge. Leah said, some of Alicia Keys' songs that I know are If I Don't Get You, No One, My Boo, Girl on Fire, Falling, Empire State of Mind, You Don't Know My Name, Try Sleeping with a Broken Heart, A Woman's Worth, Gramercy Park, This Girl Is on Fire, Brand New Me, Superwoman, We Are Here, Show Me Love, and Wasted Energy. I am impressed, Evan said. But you have to list Justin's and Beyoncé's songs before I give you your award. Okay, Leah said. Leah said, I know a lot of Justin's songs because he is from the younger generation. I will mention more than 20 of his songs. Okay, I am listening, Evan said. Leah said, Justin Bieber's songs that I know are Nothing Like Us, Monster, Love Me, That Should Be Me, Never Say Never, One Less Lonely Girl, As Long As You Love Me, 10, 0 Hours, Off My Face, What Do You Mean, All I Want for Christmas Is You, Lonely, Intentions, Baby, Ghost, Stuck With You, Beauty and a Beat, Boyfriend, Too Much, Peaches, and Stay. I know a lot of songs that Beyoncé sang too because she inspires a lot of young girls like me. A lot of young girls like me look up to her and want to achieve what she has achieved. She is a perfect definition of what a 21st century woman should be. Some of her songs that I know are Bills, Crazy in Love, Say My Name, Single Ladies, Run the World, Brown Skin Girl, Love on Top, Listen, Brown Eyes, Formation, Already, Naughty Girl, Partition, Dance for You, The Best Thing I Ever Had, Drunk in Love, Lose My Breath, Cater to You, Soldier, Baby Boy, Party, and Halo. Wow, Evan said. Now I believe that you are a fan of these artists you have mentioned. I hope you get to see them very soon. Thanks, Leah replied. I hope you also fulfill your dream of watching Real Madrid live at the Santiago Stadium very soon. They ended their conversation and every one of them left the gathering. When Aurora saw Leah the next day, she asked her what happened between her and Evan in the bathroom. Leah was shocked. She started thinking with her whether Aurora saw what happened in the bathroom. But she denied it and told Aurora that nothing happened. How I waited for Christmas Day. Hi there, I am Mabel. I grew up in a small neighborhood where we were predominantly farmers. It was a very peaceful atmosphere where we hardly witnessed crimes because it would be very easy to fish out the perpetrator. Because we were few, everyone knew all about everyone. Nothing was a secret there. News traveled fast. A very interesting thing about us was the fact that we took every celebration very seriously, especially Christmas Day celebrations, and those others that came only once a year. Christmas Day seemed to always have a magical thing to it, as you would always find people put their differences put aside just to raise a cup. It was a day when everyone had enough to eat. As children, we always looked forward to that time because we got the opportunity to visit, or receive visitors, and relatives who always brought gifts. I really enjoyed this part because that was when I had the opportunity to get new clothes and other things which I couldn't get during the year. One person that I eagerly anticipated her coming was my Auntie Stacy. My Auntie Stacy was my mother's younger sister. She was a tall blue-eyed blonde who had lots of C. She was close to my mum, and Mum would often tell stories of how they looked out for each other while growing up. My mom and Auntie Stacy were the only children of their parents. Their parents were very religious people who cared more about their reputation than their two daughters, so when Auntie Stacy got pregnant while preparing for college, their parents, who could not stand the shame, threw her out of the house. They cut her off from the family and even demanded that my mom keep her distance from Auntie Stacy, otherwise she would suffer the same fate. They never showed an iota of pity, not even when the parents of the young boy who got Auntie Stacy pregnant rejected their daughter. Well, my mom was not going to stand by and watch her sister treated so badly because she made a mistake, so stole a little amount of money from her parents, and then ran away with her sister to live in the ghetto of another city close by. Painful still was the fact that their parents never bothered to go after them even when they learned of their whereabouts and their pitiable conditions. My mom did all she could to help feed them both while they were expecting the child, but the ghetto life was no place for two young girls from a religious background, and within 3 months, my Auntie Stacy suffered a miscarriage. They couldn't go back home at this point, and even if they did, they would not be welcomed, so they resigned to their fate. They both started adapting to the life of the ghetto while they looked for a means of survival. Within a short time, they had gathered up some money to send just one of them to college. My mom, who was ahead of my sister, had dropped out of college when she ran away to take care of her, but now the opportunity came. She asked my sister to reapply for college. That was how my mother gave up her academic pursuits for her sister. Auntie Stacy would always say that my mom gave her a second chance at life. Auntie Stacy, who still had a beauty that was captivating, quickly had boys flocking around her, but it wasn't difficult for Auntie Stacy, who had suffered the pain of deception and rejection from family and lover, to keep them at arm's length. She had learned her lesson in no bitter way, and she was not ready to walk down that path twice. Besides, she wouldn't want to disappoint my mom, who was still making sacrifices just to keep her in school. Auntie Stacy eventually graduated from law school and set up her law firm, which was beginning to gain a very good reputation in the city. She remained ever grateful to Mom, and she always looked for every means to show her appreciation. After her sister's graduation, my mom then decided to start paying some attention to herself. Up until that time, she had lived her life for Auntie Stacy. Mom began making plans to go into livestock farming, and that was when she moved over to the neighborhood where she eventually met my dad, who was already plying his trade along that line. They got married informally, on my dad's farm, with Auntie Stacy and the neighbors as guests. Auntie Stacy was never really in support of her sister getting married. She was scared that her sister could fall into the wrong hands. Her own bitter experience had left her with a scar on the inside that constantly told her that all men are the same. Marriage was off the table. She had long decided not to get romantically involved with any man, and even when Mom tried getting to change her mind and consider accepting one out of the numerous suitors flocking around her, I would watch as Auntie Stacy would laugh and say that she was already married to my mom. She said Mom was her everything, and so she had no interest in marriage. Although she joked about it, her actions were in line with her words. Auntie Stacy would often call just to see how we were doing and if we needed any help. But even though Mummy usually said that everything was going on well, she would still send some money to us. She used Christmas as an opportunity to get us the things that we needed, knowing full well that my mom would have no other option than to accept it since it was Christmas. She got me clothes and toys because she knew my parents didn't have enough money to buy me these things very often. So now you can understand why I eagerly anticipated her coming. The last time when she came to visit, she had promised to take me back with her when next she came. I would be spending Christmas at her place. I couldn't wait. I knew that Christmas would be the best because Auntie Stacy was really fun to be with, and for the second time in my life, I would be spending Christmas outside our neighborhood, and I was certain that the experience would be better than the first. The first time I spent Christmas outside my neighborhood was at my dad's brother's place. Uncle Rick was a short, stout, and robust fellow who quickly forgot a promise soon after it was made. All through my life, he always broke the Christmas rule. I had celebrated Christmas with my parents 14 times, and in the whole of my 14 years, never for once did he bring along a present during any of his visits to our home. None for the kid, none for parents. He always ate and drank all that was available. He even took some while going home. It was clear that he loved the Christmas period because it was a means for him to feed off people. He just loved taking advantage of the generosity of people during this period. When visiting, he came empty, but when leaving, he left with his stomach filled to stupor and some of the meals well packaged. The only thing he ever left behind were promises. Promises he never intended to fulfill. I had seen this attitude over the years that I eventually lost any excitement when he was around. I knew that he was only there for himself. Each time Mom suggested visiting him for the first time, he always found a way of evading it. Dad was not surprised. He knew his brother too well. My dad and Uncle Rick grew up fighting because Uncle Rick always seemed to want the things that belonged to Dad. They were the only children of their parents who were very prosperous farmers who supplied their farm produce to various industries in the city. Uncle Rick was very cunning right from the start. Even though they were both expected to help out on the farm, Uncle Rick never seemed interested. There were times that he would pretend to be down with an illness so that he would not be asked to help out, and if he ever went on errands, that was because there was something in it for him or he was just trying to impress a girl. He would oftentimes be seen helping out a lady with certain chores which he never did at home. He was known to be fond of ladies. Although Uncle Rick hated working on the farm, his parents knew that he loved negotiating things to suit him, so they decided that they were going to be taking him along each time that they went to the city to sell their products so that he could learn how to put his negotiation power to good use. There was a time when they were to make a trip to the city very early the next morning, but Uncle Rick suddenly developed a fever by night, so he had to stay back. My dad was to take cards of him and equally supervise the people working on the farm, so after their parents left, my dad quickly prepared something for Uncle Rick before going to the farm. While it was noon, he hurriedly left the farm to go and attend to Uncle Rick. On getting home, he began hearing funny noises from Uncle Rick's room. Fearing that the fever may have escalated to something worse, he quickly rushed into the room, and to his amazement, he found Uncle Rick and a girl making out. In the heat of the moment, they had forgotten to lock the doors. While the lady hurriedly put on her clothes, Uncle Rick wore a smile. He knew that even though Dad was angry, wasn't going to sell him out. Although Dad kept quiet about what had happened, he made up his mind never to fall prey to Uncle Rick's schemes. It was when Uncle Rick turned 28 that he decided to follow in the footsteps of my father and break away from his parents to establish a business. His parents did give him all the support that he needed, just like they had given to my dad. But while my dad chose to relocate to a small and quiet neighborhood to start his life, Uncle Rick decided to go to the city, and no one was ever really certain the kind of business that he had established. One thing which my dad did know, however, was the fact that Uncle Rick broke away from his parents so he could have the liberty of living the kind of lifestyle that he has always loved, without being reprimanded for it. Even though he seemed to keep in touch with my family, he always seemed secretive about himself. It was during Christmas last year when he visited us and heard Auntie Stacy telling my mom that she wanted the whole of us to come to spend the new year at her place, that he immediately sighed and said that it was exactly what he wanted, telling my parents. My dad wasn't going to fall for his lies, so he immediately told him that we would be accepting his invitation over that of Auntie Stacy. He told Auntie Stacy that she could have us as her guests the following year. Uncle Rick, who never saw my dad's response coming, now knew there was no way he could keep us from his place this time around. We got to his place on New Year's Eve, and my expectant uncle was already waiting to receive us. His place was nice, far better than our home. I couldn't believe that the very uncle who never gave anyone a dime could live in such a beautiful house. When we got in, a beautiful lady was already preparing dinner, and it was at the dining table that Uncle Rick introduced her as his fiancée. You could see the pride in Uncle Rick's voice as he held her from behind while planting a kiss on her chin, a gesture that was meant to show us that she was all his. Dad knew nothing about the women in his brother's life, but I heard him tell Mummy later on that night that he hopes this lady has come to stay. This lady was nice to us throughout our stay there. She made sure that we were comfortable in every way, and the way she carried herself, my parents rightly guessed that she was from a family who belonged to the high class. It was no wonder my uncle was full of pride. She was way out of his league. One thing that seemed to bother my dad, though, was the fact that Uncle Rick could afford the kind of luxury that he enjoyed. He knew that Uncle Rick couldn't have made so much money in a short period of time. Besides, the fact that Uncle Rick always demanded food which he could take back home with him each time he came visiting, easily suggested that he was not financially buoyant. As our time at Uncle Rick's place drew to a close, Dad was forced to ask him about the kind of business he was into, as we hadn't seen him leave the house for work since we came. When Dad finally asked him about it, he just laughed and said it was a discussion for next time. The day of our departure finally arrived, and while we were getting set to leave, we suddenly heard a loud bang on the door. It sounded the second time, and we all rushed out to see what was wrong. When we got there, we saw a lady who was pregnant, demanding to see Uncle Rick. She was already going around the house screaming his name, and when Uncle Rick's girlfriend demanded that this pregnant lady leave her house, a fight immediately ensued. Although this lady was pregnant, she quickly subdued my uncle's girlfriend and almost gave her the beating of her life if not for the timely intervention of my mom and Dad. While they were being separated, this pregnant lady began calling my uncle's girlfriend a husband snatcher who uses her ill-gotten wealth to steal people's husbands. We were all carried away that we failed to realize that Uncle Rick had left the house. It took a while before my parents got both parties to calm down. That was when the pregnant lady revealed that she had fed and accommodated Uncle Rick, who had promised her marriage for 2 years. Within those 2 years, Uncle Rick always found it difficult getting a job, but he never found it difficult getting drunk and bringing ladies into her own house. She had put up with it because she loved him and they would soon get married. But he recently moved out of the house after she got pregnant. She tried all her best to reach him, but he just kept on avoiding her. The pregnant lady had barely finished speaking when Uncle Rick's girlfriend broke down and started shedding tears. She claimed that she never knew Uncle Rick was engaged to be married. She said she met him about 6 months ago and he proposed to her a day after Christmas. It was after she said yes to him that she asked him to move in with her. I watched from my corner as Uncle Rick's girlfriend, who was visibly broken, said she couldn't bear the shame of telling her parents and everyone that her fiancé was expecting a child from someone else. We all felt bad for these ladies. It was now clear to my parents that the only reason Uncle Rick may have proposed to this lady was so he could move in with her and get us to believe everything we saw was his. My dad had his question answered. Uncle Rick was jobless and he lived off of hardworking women. I don't really know what Dad and Mom may have said to those ladies, but it was clear that the situation was far from settled as Uncle Rick was nowhere to be seen. We returned back to our small neighborhood that day, and I knew that I never wanted a holiday like that. No one had from Uncle Rick for a while, and every attempt to reach him proved abortive. However, news soon came from my grandparents, who called Dad to inform him that Uncle Rick suddenly returned home looking haggard. He came back pay-handed, and so it was clear he didn't have a means of livelihood. His parents wondered at what happened to the money he was given, and all the claims of establishing a business. When my dad was informed about his brother's whereabouts, he decided to go visit his parents to inform them of the pitiable situation in which Uncle Rick had put 2 innocent ladies. He began making arrangements to travel down with my mom, but because my school had not yet resumed, they deliberated on taking me along or sending me over to Auntie Stacy's place to stay for the few days that they would be gone. I was very excited at the idea of staying with Auntie Stacy. I knew that it was going to be the best time of my life. Auntie Stacy always treated me like a daughter, and even though she had promised to take me with her when her next holiday arrived, I knew that she would be as glad as I did to have me come over to her place. My excitement soon came to an end when it was decided that I would be going with them to visit my grandparents. They had only seen me a few months after I was born, and since I didn't really know them, my parents saw this as an opportunity for a reunion. When I tried convincing them to send me over to Auntie Stacy's place, they said that she had resumed work and I would simply be a burden to her, and besides, we would all be going to her place during the next holiday. When we got to my grandparents' home, I was fascinated by what I saw. Although I knew that they were farmers, I never expected them to be much more organized than my parents. I had never seen such a level of mechanized farming in the whole of our neighborhood. They had a large expanse of farmland that was more than half the size of our neighborhood. There was a section for livestock, and they had people assigned to each section. As a result of my background, I never thought that my father could have an inheritance, how much more, an inheritance of this magnitude. My grandparents immediately fell in love with me. Most of their workers who had been around for long came to greet my dad, and I heard them say that they hoped he was back to stay. While all that was going on, my eye spotted my uncle, who was passing glances at a lady who looked like a worker. My mind quickly drifted to the reason why we actually came. Dad had promised the lady who was pregnant for Uncle Rick that he would help get in touch with his brother and ensure he takes responsibility for the child once it's born. It was after dinner that my parents and grandparents began discussing. I overheard Dad telling them that Uncle Rick only returned home to avoid the problem that he had created for himself. Dad rehearsed the incident that took place between both ladies, and I could hear my grandpa sigh in disappointment. Even though it was a custom for Uncle Rick to embarrass the family, he just seemed to be getting worse by the day. A few days after he came home, Grandpa overheard him telling a lady that he was the heir to all of the farm and he would make her his wife if only she slept with him. The lady was quickly sent away. By morning, my grandparents gathered my mom and dad and Uncle Rick together. Granddad asked Uncle Rick if the news of him impregnating a lady was true, and he quickly attested to it. When asked what he intended doing about the lady and her unborn child, Uncle Rick simply said that he wasn't ready for marriage, neither was he ready to be a father, but that he would use his own share of inheritance to take care of the mother and child, and ensure that they lived a comfortable life. At this point, Grandma broke down and started crying as she called her son a good-for-nothing moron. I watched from a distance as my mom quickly rushed to console her. Uncle Rick didn't seem the least disturbed. He was indeed a moron. It was agreed that the pregnant lady who had lost her job would be brought to live with Uncle Rick and his parents until she delivers her baby, after which she would be given some capital to go back and start up a business that would take care of her and the child. We were getting ready to leave that morning when Granddad called in the family lawyer. He asked that we didn't leave yet until he was done with his lawyer. After a lengthy session with the lawyer, he finally gathered his family to him. This time around, I was equally called in. Granddad began by thanking everyone for being by his side all these years. He then started praising his wife, who had always pushed him to keep going further even when there was little progress in sight. I could see the gratitude in his eyes as he says that if he had another life, he would choose to spend it with her over and over again. He then proceeded to thank my dad for putting in his best in the past to ensure that the family business was thriving. When he got to Uncle Rick's turn, what seemed like a vote of thanks turned to a note of regret. He started recounting all the privileges which were given to Uncle Rick and how he took them for granted. He spoke about how Uncle Rick would always team up with some workers behind his back to sell some of the produce, only to lavish them on women, and even though Granddad knew all along, he allowed him to have his way because he thought it would finally make him committed to the family business. He went further to remind Uncle Rick in the presence of everyone present, of how he had almost used the farmland as a surety when he wanted to gamble. I listened as Granddad spoke with hurt about how Uncle Rick took a huge loan from the bank, in the name of the family, only to squander it on the gambling table, and Granddad had to repay the loan when the banks came calling. He spoke about the huge sum of the money they had given Uncle Rick when he said he wanted to establish a business in the city, only to end up getting a lady pregnant, and almost ruining the life of another. What was most painful at this point was the fact that Uncle Rick didn't seem to show any sign of remorse. He just wore a look that clearly said that he didn't care. Grandpa now got to the main reason why he had gathered us. He told us that he had just rewritten his will, and he wanted us to equally hear it from him. He then proceeded to say that all of the family's properties, investment, and even the farm, had been willed to my dad. My dad was to relocate with his family, from the small neighborhood where we lived, into the family house, and he was to take over the reins of leadership from Granddad immediately. Granddad said he and his wife were retiring from the business. They would sit back and enjoy the rest of their years in peace and comfort. He then stated that from henceforth, Uncle Rick was to move out of the house, and if he wished to still live there, he would only live as a worker. He would live with the other workers and he would be paid the same amount as the other workers are paid. The inheritance that Uncle Rick had long anticipated was now taken from him. Worse still, was the fact that the privileges that he once enjoyed as a son would be taken away from him, as he was now faced with the only option of being a worker who would have to work like everyone else just to survive. Uncle Rick was stunned. He looked like he had just been hit by a rock. He initially thought that it was a joke, until Granddad immediately issued a disclaimer to the public, stating that Uncle Rick no longer had any rights to negotiate on any business on behalf of the family. On our way back to our neighborhood, I watched as Mom told Auntie Stacy over the phone about how our fortune had immediately turned. Auntie Stacy was elated. She was really pleased with the way Granddad handled the situation. She had never really been a fan of Uncle Rick, and since she had once fallen victim to a man, she detested men who took advantage of women. Although she was glad Uncle Rick got served what he deserved, she was even happier for her sister who had chosen to love a man, even when she initially didn't know that he had an inheritance of such magnitude. News quickly spread around the small community about what had happened, and it was clear that everyone was going to miss us. On the day when we were about to leave the community, everyone gathered to say goodbye, and although I was certain that I would be more comfortable in any grandparent's place, I soon found myself shedding tears. I was leaving the place where I had lived my whole life. All I had learned in life, the friends I had made, were all in this neighborhood, and even though I was saying goodbye, I knew I would carry with me lots of memories that I would cherish. We got back to my grandparents' place and we easily began settling in. Uncle Rick had run away because he couldn't stand the shame and ridicule, but Granddad knew that he would be back sooner than expected. Meanwhile, I was told to move into the room that once belonged to him. Everyone was very friendly to my mom and me, as my dad already had a good reputation among most of them. But Dad was not going to let me become lazy simply because I now had better privileges. Dad made it clear to me that I would be working just the same way I did when we lived in the neighborhood. It didn't really bother me because the way the farming system was organized here seemed to really fascinate me, and so I wouldn't mind spending time on the farm after school, just to see what more was in stock. This would really keep me engaged while I waited for Christmas Day. Hey guys, would you still work on the farm if you had this new privilege of mine, or would you spend it doing other things? I would love to know your thoughts on this.
Thanksgiving Day. Hi, I'm Juliet. Today is Thanksgiving Day, but everybody is moody. We are all seated around the dining table, with no one taking the initiative to eat. Mr. Givenchy, the father of the twins, was asked to give us a top. but he instead went out to receive a mysterious call. Fred's head was on the dining table. Jake was not even seated in the dining. He was watching a drama series in the living room. The twins, Mya and Mia, were in disagreement for the first that I knew about. Nobody seems to be in the Thanksgiving mood. My parents, the Bradley, tried to lighten up the atmosphere, but no one seemed interested, especially when my dad started with his weird jokes. My mom was forced to ask him to keep shut. I was starving from the day's work, but I could not eat as well. I'm scared of the people would say. I work at the grocery store some miles away from home. I am trying to raise some money to help my parents since I will be going to college soon. I drop by at the grocery store every working day to take the afternoon shift. My boss, Mr. Durant, is a lovely old man. He is old enough to be my grandfather, but he owns a store. I don't think he is selling for profit. So far, so good. I have been an honest girl, and Mr. Durant had been a loyal boss. "You're a good girl," he said a few months ago. He told me about how his previous employees had stolen his goods and money. That justified why he was reluctant when I came with my application letter. He was blunt. "I don't need another employee," he said. I was persuasive because I needed the job, and too. After all, Mr. Durant needed help. I never knew he had diabetes until my second month into the job when I saw him jabbing himself with insulin at the thigh. I got the job at his place because I always rewrite the same application letter and drop it in his mailbox every day. He must have been tired of tearing papers. I should have considered other options, but I knew older adults are the nicest, and they don't like sacking young girls like myself. After a while, I saw a message from Mr. Durant, and he wanted me to come for an interview tomorrow afternoon. I branched at his place after school the following day, and there was no interview per se. Mr. Durant just took me around the store, and he told me where I could find the goods and showed me the restroom and other stuff. The store was quite more extensive than I thought. After introducing me to the store, he gave me a t-shirt. With Durant's Need Store written on it, he gave me an employee's badge with my name already inscribed. "Welcome to Durant's place," he said and shook my hands. Everything was faster than I had thought. I was happy I got myself the job. I needed it so much, and now I was sure finances might not be a limiting factor when my admission came. I thanked Mr. Durant. He asked me to call him Joe now. "Thank you, Mr. Durant," I replied. He smiled and said, "Well done." He gave me some laid-down rules. There were no rules, to be candid. He just wanted to make it as official as possible. Some of what he said was that nothing must miss unless they're stolen. I should show up as early as possible and leave by 9 p.m. I was okay with everything he said. Mr. Durant doesn't have to leave the store, and his home is just behind the store. There is this door at the end of the store. I had never entered his place, and I have no reason to because Mr. Durant spends almost the whole day in the store. He only goes into the bath and changes his clothes. After working with Mr. Durant for a month, he awarded me the Employee of the Month. Who else will he give it to? I am the only one that works there. After awarding me, he let me know that I was the only person he had presented with the award. He had never awarded any other person, not once. My diligence convinced him. I was proud of myself. After working at Mr. Durant's, I found out that it wasn't as easy as I had believed it to be. A sales rep in a store at the center of the town is as busy as a bank in the city. I got tired after every day. I wonder how Mr. Durant had been coping. Even with the stress, I have been punctual to date. I gave it all my best because I didn't want to lose the job, and more so, I received tips from the customer. Some made mention that I am pretty faster in responding to them compared with Mr. Durant. You can't blame the older man, and it is normal for him to be slow at that age. I was the best help Mr. Durant could get. From then, he had been rewarding me with the award to date. It is not a big deal, and I had a cartoon full of the awards at home. There is no place to hang them anymore in my room. I am tired of the award now, and I had already lost count. He cooked for himself and me most of the time. I don't take supper at home anymore because I would have eaten at Mr. Durant's until this night, the night of Thanksgiving. Mr. Durant had traveled to his son's place the day before and left me in charge since we were now on holiday. I was reluctant to go home because something had happened, and home wasn't as fun as it was when my mom's younger sister, her husband, and the twins had come to spend the holiday with us. Jake and Fred, my younger brothers, were not the best hosts. Mr. Durant's store is the perfect excuse for me not to go home until late in the night. Once I got home, I said my greetings and straight to my room. That had been the norm until this night.
I am regretting coming home already. And I should have gone to Hope's place.
Hope is my one and only friend. Her place is just 3 houses away from Durrant's Need store. She visited the store often, even before I became Mr. Durrant's employee. Now that I work there, it gives her more reason to come. She does come to help me with sales and keep my company at the same time. The effort potentiates my productivity. For more reason, Mr. Durrant is fond of me. I usually go to her place to do my assignment and science project before heading home. But that wasn't the case tonight. I just wanted to go home and eat. I was so hungry. I would have gotten myself a box of cereals and milk if not for the mom said, "Today, we eat together like a big family." My dad is not a fan of association, but I don't know what my mom had fed him that night. He was so optimistic about eating together. I knew for sure, and this dinner was to solve the taboo the family just found out. I wasn't aware of what had happened, and I wanted to eat. Is that hard to ask for? Jake, who was the youngest, is the weird one in the house. I don't understand how he pretended nothing was happening in the house. He wasn't interested in the family dinner, and nobody could convince him into it, not even Dad. Sometimes, I love to be like him, but I am not just capable of doing such things, maybe because I am feminine. That night, I was holding the fork but couldn't touch my pie since Mr. Givenchy had found himself a reason to leave us at the table. I need something to make me leave the table. I was not involved in the mess, and I still wonder why my stomach had to suffer for it. I looked at Jake, whose head was still on the table. The boy would love to disappear. At the same time, I was in the kitchen with Mom when I went to get myself a box of cereals before she stopped me. She told me that Jake had not left him since morning. I was sorry for him because he was my younger brother. I tried advising him about his attitude with women in the past, but he always says he knows what he is doing. Now, he understands he doesn't know anything, and he has no idea. My pity for him soon changed to anger because he is the reason why I can't eat this night, and can't leave the table in my room and do something else before I sleep off. Thanksgiving night soon became a confusing night at our place. Thanksgiving night in my house is not the day to give thanks. I had longed for this night, and this is the only day I get to eat pumpkin pie. I like pumpkin pie, and it is my favorite. I had made plans with Mum on how the pie must look. Pie looks like I had planned with Mum, but I might not eat it. Mrs. Givenchy, my mum's sister, is absent-minded. For sure, she's seated, but you can quickly tell she's not with us. It is embarrassing for her. She had lost her face, her daughters had embarrassed her, and Mr. Givenchy is not understanding. Why did this have to happen? It concerns me, but right now, I want to fill my stomach. This is a fundamental cause for the family, but I can think of the pumpkin pie that I can't eat in front of me. Mia and MY were the most confused individuals in the room. They had lost their face. The two are sitting at my two sides, but I am avoiding looking at their face. I feel uncomfortable. They are my longed-for cousins, and now we have met, but we can't enjoy the time. I know we might not see again. Mr. Givenchy will do everything to stop them from coming. They won't want to come even if they are permitted to do so. This family is messed up already. Jake and I are the two with no compromised personalities among the family members. Jake is not concerned about the whole event, but I want to eat. My dad was cracking some stupid jokes before my mum shut him up. Now, he just placed his head in his palm. My dad is not the quiet one, but now he is as quiet as the graveyard. No one made a noise. Our dinner had not been this silent until today. I didn't know what had happened, and Mum didn't say much. But Jake hinted to me about the uproar while I was busy working at Durrant's place. How I wish he didn't update me. I would have lackadaisically eaten the meal. Before anyone could stop me from eating, I would have gulped a few slices. But now my hunger is mixed with emotions. Jake was not emotional at all, and the guy was enjoying his time. He has always been the bad boy of the house, but today it is his time to prove that there is a worse. How I wish I should just stay in the store, sleep there perhaps. While at the dining table, my mind went back to the event at the store earlier today. A customer came to buy a couple of goods. He took some extra stuff and tucked them in his jacket's pocket. He got to the counter and placed all the goods in the cart on the table. I gave him the price for the goods, then I asked him for the rest. "Your money is $60, sir. Will you be paying for the rest of the goods?" I asked, "Which other goods are you talking about?" He laughed in return. I replied calmly, "The ones in your jacket's pocket. I can help you get them out if you don't mind, and I will love it if you respect yourself, sir," I said, calmly proud of myself. The people in the queue had started looking at the man with a funny face. Oh, he said, I had almost forgotten, he said as he brought out the stuff. The people in the queue applauded my sharpness. Little did they know that there were CCTVs at every store corner. I grinned at their ignorance. Mr. Durant will be proud of me for that. More than that, I am proud of myself. Juliet. A voice snapped me out from the only thing I had enjoyed since I had gotten home. Why are you smiling? Mrs. Givenchy asked. Who is the boy? She asked again. Which boy? I responded, quite shocked with the questions. The boy you're thinking of that is making you smile, she replied. You are old enough to have a boyfriend, so don't be ashamed, she continued. So, your two daughters are also old enough to screw one guy. I said to myself, that would have been a very nasty thing to say, and my mom won't be pleased with that. I responded to her views by just smiling. She smiled back. Just a call from hope where Mr. Durant will be appreciated at this point in time. I don't know how to cook a lie. My mom knows I don't have any science projects to do since I had finished them 2 weeks ago. I should have gone camping. I didn't go because Hope said it would be boring. She said the last year's camp she attended was nothing to write home about. It was a total waste of her time. I should have gone anyways because Mr. Durant said he did not mind giving me the 2 weeks off, but considering Hope's experience, I changed my mind. Now, I am stuck in a Thanksgiving drama, and I am forced to play a significant role. While I was lost in my thought, Mr. Givenchy had finally returned from receiving his call. That was my boss, he said. To be precise, our company is planning to have a branch somewhere in Africa, Nigeria. And I will be heading the project, he rejoined. That was a piece of good news, but it wasn't enough to clear the cloud at the dining table. My dad congratulates him and wishes him the best of luck, and I do so myself. His wife pecked him. Leah, MYA, and Fred can't even say a thing. It was apparent the twins are happy for their dad's achievement but could not say a thing because of their current position on things, while my little brother still has his head on the table. I haven't seen his face since I got home. He has been in that position forever. Is he crying, or he is just ashamed? Pumpkin pie is not really his thing. That is, there are a few bowls of noodles on the table. He can't eat them anymore, too, because they would have been cold. Oh, that reminds me what time it is. I raised my head up to check the wall clock hanging on the wall towards the living room. I can't believe my eyes, it is just 10 minutes to 10. So, I have been at this table for just 20 minutes. It looked like 3 hours to me already. Why is the time so slow? How can I get myself away from the mess I am finding myself in? I looked at Jake. He seems to be enjoying himself. His eyes are glued to the TV, and sometimes he presses his phone. I would have loved to press my phone now, too, only that Mom said, no phone at the dining. I sighed. Everybody looked in my direction, but no one said a thing. It is normal to sigh at this moment. That has been the most common means of communication since I got back from work. The only person found laughing is Jake, and no one can tell him to stop. Not even Dad. He is on a league of his own. He had been the different one among us since he was little. He has no regard for Fred and me until recently. He fought a lot at school and does not care about the principal reports of him. He loves to be alone. You can't enter his rooms unless you get his knocking code right, not even Dad. Mom is the only one left out of that criterion. He loves his privacy. He feels like he does not really fit in with the family, and that everyone does not really like him. I will look like that if you're always the subject at every family meeting. He is used to being left alone, and today, no one can force him to join the awkward family moment. I never wished to be in his shoes for once, but today I would have appreciated it. The pumpkin pie is cold, the bowl of noodles is cold, and Mr. Givenchy is still yet to say his remark on Thanksgiving Day. Fred is still yet to raise his head, and my mom and her sister are ready to clear the table. No Thanksgiving right on Thanksgiving night, I said to myself. I should have bought a few burritos before heading home. I didn't because I am saving for college. No, here I am, no food nor happiness on a Thanksgiving night because my aunt, her husband, and the twins came visiting. This is the worst Thanksgiving ever, and all blame to the twins and Fred. I am not involved in this mess, and I don't want to. I don't even know how it started, although Fred hinted to me about the progress. I warned him, but he neglected my warning because he wanted to satisfy his urge. Urge satisfied, mess showed up. What a night, isn't it? Hope had said she would call me. I am here expecting her call, but maybe the girl is enjoying herself, or the babe had slept off. The girl can sleep a lot. When we were in elementary school, we were asked to say our hobby. I remembered saying mine was playing video games. I am no more a fan of video games. But my friend said her hobby is sleeping. Every other kid laughed at her. She was really ashamed of herself. But before the day ended, my friend still slept in class. That is my hope for you. Ah still enjoys sleeping to date. Maybe that is why I am her only friend. We both don't have the luxury of time to share. We are a perfect fit for each other. She sleeps a lot, I work a lot. I helped my mom and her sister clean up. Since no one was eating and really cared about the food, I took some slices. And I headed straight to my room, leaving my mom and her sister to wash the dishes. With what happened, I expected my mom and her sister to resolve it with a big argument, but it seems nothing can come in between the two sisters. Good for them, unlike my siblings, a small toy can be a good reason for them to exchange blows. My dad and Mr. Givenchy are outside talking like a man to man. I am in my room upstairs, looking at them below. I was checking on them to avoid all kinds of havoc. If their men's talk turns to punch exchange, I can quickly call upon their wives to resolve it. Now, I have all the time for myself. I have the piece of pumpkin pie I had been craving, and I can now chat with my phone. I opened my phone, and I saw 2 messages from Hope. What? I didn't notice the notification sound. Oh, my phone is still silent. It is late already, and I can't go out anymore. I enjoyed the pumpkin pie. I need to get myself a cup of fruit juice. I went downstairs to the kitchen. I got myself the juice. Mom and her sister are still enjoying each other's company. Fred is now in the living room with his phone. I guessed he is working on his video blog. Jake is still busy with the drama series that will end in less than an hour. Mia and MYA are reading a book. Everyone seems to be minding their business. Jake saw me and came close to me. He sipped part of the juice and followed me to my room. This is funny, Jake has never entered my room, and neither had I entered him since his 10th birthday. It has been 5 years since then, and now he wanted to enter my room. Of course, he's always welcome. He's my little brother. We entered the room, and he asked me, "Are you interested in knowing what happened?" He asked, "Haven't you told me already?" I responded, "You really need to know some parts," he said as if he was about to tell me a mystery about the ancient world. This is what had caused the moody Thanksgiving celebration at the dining table earlier this night. Fred is just 17, though, although he is just 11 months younger than me. We are kind of close, but not one of us is close with Jake, who does things differently. Fred opened up quickly to me until when puberty started setting in, we got ashamed of sharing some physiological changes with one another. I got closer to Mom since she is of the same gender as me while he found comfort in the arms of Dad. I started experiencing puberty changes before he did. We first noticed my sudden increase in the breast. Before I didn't mind wearing panties with Fred around, then I stopped. I told my mom that it is normal for me to experience such change. She said I am becoming a woman. I don't want to become a woman, I usually tell myself then. Then a few weeks after, Minert showed up. Then, I needed to start using the pad and the likes. Fred was in my room when he had his first wet dreams. Had he been fantasizing about me? That increased our distance. We soon saw those changes as usual, and we reunited. Fred respected my privacy, but he didn't care about his. To date, he is the only person that opens his door. You don't have to knock before entering. He is a simple boy, to be honest. As Fred grew, his urge increased. He started experimenting with different things. He started clearing his web history for no reason in particular. I wanted to ask him about that, but I later found out that he had been doing the guy's thing. That wasn't enough, he started getting laid. Although he hasn't brought any girl home yet, I noticed his game with other girls since we are in the same class. And Hope once told me that Fred had approached her, but she declined because of our friendship. Hope has been a good friend. She is the most decent girl in the class. I am not as decent as I look, but I draw lines. I believe Fred has had enough of the schoolgirls. He is still a cool-headed boy. I think that is what the girls fall for. Nobody really shares his stories at school. All he has done are in secret. Sometimes, he told me about some of his fish. Fred started venturing into online sexing and sex chatting. He met several ladies, younger or older, that are not interested in a serious relationship like him. They just want to get laid until their classmates expect a relationship. While on his course the web dating, he met a girl with 2 personalities. He told me about the strange girl that can be naughty today and calm tomorrow. I told him to step out of that relationship, that the lady might be playing with his feelings. Do I look like I have any feelings? He would ask. That's true, you can be getting laid every week with your feelings attached. He just satisfied his unsatisfiable urge. He told me that what really attached him to that lady was that she looked like my doppelganger. I checked for myself and realized the lady looked like me. He traveled to meet the lady, and he got laid, mission completed. But this time, he wanted to get more. That was when it became real. This time the lady wasn't talking naughty as the first time, and he didn't really enjoy it. He told me everything. I could say that the lady might not be in the mood since I am not experienced. This morning, my mom told us that his sister and her family would be coming to celebrate Thanksgiving with us. I had seen the sister but had never seen her husband and the twins. We were all anticipating the coming of our cousins. I left for Mr. Durant's store for the day's job while my brothers helped arrange the house for the comfort of our guests. I closed the store by 9:09 p.m. sharp and took a taxi home rather than trekking as I am used to. I got home. My mom was moody yet preparing for the feast. The house was unnecessarily quiet. Then, Jake just me that the girl Fred had been meeting recently is twins and they are our cousins. How can this be resolved? How did they find out? Do you know how?
Hi, I'm Stacy. I have lived alone with my mom since my sister went to college a few years back. I never knew my dad, all my memories of him were from pictures or what I was told about him. I really didn't mind, my sister was my whole world before she left for college. Recently, I have had problems with boys. No guy wanted to date me for a week at the most. The guys just wanted to get intimate with me and ditch me. At first, I thought I was the one ditching them. But now I realized I was the one being played. I couldn't take this anymore. I demanded a change, and I am trying to fix things at all costs. Things shouldn't continue like this. This is my story. This is how it began. I was the hottest girl in school. I dated as many guys as I wanted. Or should I say the guys dated me long enough as they wanted. I thought it was all about me until I realized. I wanted to make my sister's version of high school for myself. My sister, Brielle, was my best friend. She was only because she filled my head with how he dated a guy and ditched him. How another became a crybaby because of her. How Vic knelt down in the dome just to go watch a movie with her. And some other cool stuff. Don't be deceived, Brielle is way better than me. My mum said she took after our aunt, who lives in Dallas. I am just my mum's daughter. Even though I possess more prominent curves, both hind and rare, Brielle is still a babe to behold. I would have taken all her stories to be myths, but they were evident. Most of the time, when Mum was off to the office, Brielle came home with different guys. And she didn't repeat one twice. Never except for Drew. I could tell the reason myself, that guy was huge and muscular. Maybe he hit the gym regularly because the packs on his abdomen are well packed. Drew is the kind of guy every woman fantasizes about. Right from grade 8. I had been planning myself to achieve more than Brielle. She was my role model. But I wanted to reset the pace. It went well, just as I had planned. And I can tell I learned from the best. Brielle was damn good. I started with Stuart. Stuart was just the kind of guy you can call the victim of everyone. Straightforward to prey on. That day was my day to be a predator. And lo, the perfect target had started eyeing me. It was easy for me to find out this boy would die to find his way into me. I noticed this. Yet I was playing hard to get. I did winkle at him whenever I caught him staring. But he was one of those boys who really needed a motivational speaker to kill a cockroach. He was my perfect victim. And I was waiting like a cat at the end of the hole to devour the rat. We were at Hudson's party that night. Hudson wasn't really celebrating anything. In fact, no one knew his birthday because he throws a party every Friday. All Hudson needs to throw a party is his parents absent from home. I was trying to get a cocktail glass when I caught Stuart sitting on the sofa behind me. He was busy gazing at my behind while his friends were doing the talking. I don't think Stuart was really interested in the discussion. He saw himself in me. Who won't want to get their hands on those vast backsides? You can't blame the innocent boy, who doesn't know the kind of problem he was about to get into. I winkled at him as I usually do, and I was moving from the living room towards the direction of the rooms. I looked back to see if he would follow, but he was resting his back on the sofa and his friend saying things to his head this time. He got up and walked in my direction. Finally, he had been motivated. He followed me and took all the corners I took. He bumped onto me, he said sorry and started shaking in his voice. I placed my hand on his head to calm his nerve. I know you like me, I whispered to his ear. I put his hands on my chest. He couldn't believe what was happening. I squeezed his hand on my chest. He looked at my face in astonishment. I bit the corner of my lips. His hands were vibrating on my chest. I opened the door and dragged him in while I gave him the kiss of his life. I could depict that he was a novice, but I played along nicely. That was what I had been doing since acting. I lay on the bed and encouraged him to come over to me. Before we started the scene, the lucky man got lucky earlier than expected. I smiled, I wasn't really interested in him. I was just teasing him. And the little guy fell for the awaiting bait. Before noticing my smile, I pushed him off me and gave him a straight face, making him uncomfortable. He pleaded for the release earlier. I could tell the guy was disappointed, but who cares? Right. I found my way out of the room and smashed the door behind me, proving that I was really angry with him. He jumped after me and pulled my hand from behind, and apologized. I didn't consider his apology a bit. Give me another chance, please. This time you won't be disappointed, he pleaded. Yes, he fell for the next trap, I said to myself. Okay, no problem, I snapped. I dragged him to the dance floor downstairs. I purposely stayed in the middle of the stage to call for attention, which I got. I placed Stuart's hands on my buttocks and added pressure on the hand so that he could squeeze those cheeks. Stuart raised up his head, feeling he was on top of the world. After a while, I perceived his hand vibrating on my buttock. I turned around, positioned my buttock between his two legs, and placed his hand over my chest. We danced to the loud music. I increased the intensity by stroking up and down on his laps with my backside. Within a few minutes, and can feel his wet pant on my mini skirt. I turned around at once. What is the meaning of this? I said aggressively. Everyone looked at us and quickly found out what had happened. Everyone started laughing at Stuart. He was ashamed of himself and ran out of the party, trying not to cry. I had a bizarre smile on my face. One down, many more to go, I said to myself. I watched him leave and continued dancing. I got the attention I needed that night. I knew I had laid the first brick, and now it would be easier for me to catch more fish in my cunning net. I didn't tell my sister on the phone about the news. I wanted to be perfect before proclaiming myself. On my checklist of naughtiness, the next and most preferential thing to do is change my friends. I needed to start walking with the most incredible, hottest, and sweetest girls in school. I was not a fan of doing things gradually. I wanted to move with the speed of a power horse. Had I known, I would have taken the stairs instead of the elevator. The second day at school, I was a different Stacy. My friends couldn't understand, so they left me alone with my madness. I caught the attention of everyone, even Mr. Collins, the history teacher, who won't fall for the girl that purposely walked within the school premises like Lady Gaga with the shape of Angelina Jolie and the face of Nicki Minaj. The focus of the school just changed from outstanding academic records to having an intimidating moment with me. "Hello, girlie," a voice standing next to my desk said. I knew that voice was Brittany's. the head of the Beatles, a group that had been terrorizing the school with their stony beauty. "Hi, Brittany," I said with the sweetest voice possible. I raised my head to look at her face. She handed me a sheet of paper and left. That's normal, what else did I know Brittany for? She's rude. I opened the article to read what was written. Atlas Corner. Cinema stall room, 4 p.m., don't be late, love from Brittany, was written jaggedly on the piece of paper. I grinned a little. Yes, I said to myself. Mission accomplished. I could not concentrate anymore in class. I was eager to meet my new friend. The Beatles. I get on rationalizing how the crew will start doing things with me involved. The numbers of boys that will ask me out in a day. The guys I will pretend I am interested in just to embarrass them. And so many other naughty and rude kinds of stuff finding their feet in my mind. I tried getting them away from my mind, but they remained stocked. Since I could not help it, I kept on enjoying the fantasy. Immediately I heard the bell. I took my things, trying hard not to rush since that was my usual self. I got my bag, this time. I had a handbag instead of the typical Scotch bag. I headed straight to the cinema stall room behind the theater. I followed Brittany's direction by heart. I got to the meeting point. I never knew that place could be that dark and dusty. I saw the light at the end of the little passage. I walked through different artistries to the light. And I tried not to drop anything, which would have been a mess. I got to where I saw the ray. Behold, Lucy and Pinky. Those two were a pain in the ass, so annoying and disrespectful. I checked my wristwatch. It was 3:52 p.m. Wow. I didn't get late to my induction party. I whispered to myself. Hello, ladies, I greeted the two girls. They did not respond nor show any gesture. It was as if I was not there. The two girls glued their faces on their phones and kept laughing and talking. Those two are good at keeping each other's company. Since I had been ideally ignored, I got myself a wooden box and made myself comfortable. Pinky looked at me as if she would say something impish, but instead continued with her gist. I brought out my phone and started checking my emails. That wasn't necessary because I wanted to while away the time while I longed for the arrival of Brittany. Finally, Brittany showed up. I checked my time to know the exact time. It was 4 p.m. on the dot. God, the girl is punctual. At last, she got that virtue. She wasn't all bad anyway. Before I could stand to greet her, the two older girls surrounded her and took a few shots with their phones. After the supposed greeting, she introduced me to the group. That was really unnecessary since we were all classmates. But I played along with it anyways. Will you like to be a Beatle? Brittany asked. I was shocked with nothing to say. But inside I was euphonious. I tried to be the tough girl they thought I was. You're wasting time asking me. I'm here already. Brittany smiled beautifully. I like this girl, she said while pointing her index finger towards me. Straight away, the two other girls started talking to me. They told me unique pieces of stuff. I wasn't intrigued, nor was I surprised by their sudden change of attitude. It was acting. And I know for sure that I just got enrolled into the school of acting. The girls helped me with all my social media accounts. Posted my picture everywhere. I took a couple of photos later uploaded. And boom, my followers started increasing. I couldn't believe that. It was as if the followers had been waiting for that moment to come to their whole life. I was introduced to some rules on how to operate flawlessly in the group. The regulations, in summary. Be rude and naughty. Isn't that why I took the appointment? Life just got more straightforward, or rather terrible. Only time will tell. Everything was going according to plan. I now walked with the most popular group in school. And dated some big boys. The one for me was that I became the most sought after in school just a few weeks after joining the Beatles. Lucy and Pinky were getting jealous, but couldn't do much since Brittany was okay with it. I knew but didn't care. For me, I am yet to achieve my goal. No one had knelt down for me yet. Within a month after my induction, I started going out with Frank. Frank was from a wealthy family. I never knew his old man, but I heard the man is the chief executive officer of a tech company. Well, without doubt. I believe because Frank did brag about his father's achievement. All he had of himself were gargets and more gargets. The relationship was so dull. The guy was just too direct. All he thinks of is what lies under my panties. Such a naughty dude. I managed to play along with the supposed relationship. Frank had so much luxury stuff and went out with rich kids like him. He was fond of me. He showed me off to his friends every time as if I was a priceless antique to be auctioned. Though he was proud, this dude knows how to spoil a lady. I made sure my mum didn't know about my relationship with Frank. She wouldn't have supported the union. Frankly speaking, what kind of single mum will help such? Her ignorant is the best for me. I had more mischievous plans to pull. Frank had a party with his wealthy friends and decided to take me along one of those days. I saw this as a significant opportunity to pull the ditching string. I told my mum that I would be sleeping over in my friend's place. She agreed. I took off one of my beautiful dresses and a heel to match, and off I went. I stopped at Brittany's place to change into the gown. I called Frank and told him to come and pick me at Brittany's home. A few hours had gone, and finally, the lover boy showed up. I exchanged kisses and told him that Brittany would love to tag along with us. I made that up because I knew what Brittany was capable of. No problem, he said. While Brittany was getting changed, Frank and I were in the living room sharing a romantic moment. Brittany came down from her room. She caught us in the moment, she coughed, and the two of us detached in a hurry. Frank led us to a black limo waiting outside Brittany's house. Inside the limo, Frank was actually a pompous host. I didn't mind because he is notorious for that. Brittany, on the other hand, was just present physically. Since Frank handed her a glass of champagne, she had been with her phone. Sometimes it looks like that is her real world. And here it is, virtual. Frank and I tried to make chemistry. But it wasn't perfect since the two of us had a different reason for dating each other. And love is omitted. I was dating him because he is rich and famous. And I needed such a feat to prove myself in this new game I play. Frank was dating me because he just wanted to show his friends that he could catch big fish. The limo stopped at the entrance of a 5-star hotel. The driver opened the door with Brittany stepping out first. Then Frank, who helped me by taking my hands. It was like a fairy tale. So, many reporters were present. There were camera flashes everywhere. Brittany was eager to face the crowd to earn more popularity while Frank waved at them. But I was able to hide my face perfectly. My mum mustn't see such things. It was a grand entry, to be candid. I met several children of vibrant personnel in the state. Every person was VIP. The first time I enjoyed such a feat. Everything was going on smoothly. Brittany had succeeded in entangling herself with another boy. She disappeared with the new guy. I guessed someone went to get dirty. I couldn't do much. I purposely made sure Brittany was here so that I could pull a perfect trick. But now she's nowhere to be found. Actually, I enjoyed myself. It was an elaborate get-together. I got everything I never tasted by just demanding. The party was going on fine while I was looking for an opportunity to create a scene. Finally, Brittany was back in the room. And Frank was busy chatting with his friends about their most expensive possession. How is that a discussion? I really didn't fit in too much. But Brittany fitted in perfectly. The girl is Tiffany in the making. Such a good actress, I must oblige. The moment had finally come. I saw a glass of red wine with Frank. He was about to turn back when I rushed towards him. making him spill the wine on the silver white dress I wore. "What have you done?" I retorted. It was a perfect first attack. He tried to draw me away from his friends and pleaded with me for the spillage. I pushed him back. "You ruined my dress," I shouted at him. Still trying to avoid the disgraceful moment. He wanted to draw me from the crowd. I slapped him. Where did that boldness come from? I couldn't believe I could do that. I was terrified within me, but yet every bit of my plan was coming to play in the perfect order. Just the way I wanted it. Brittany, doing what she knew how to do best, had started live streaming. Then the rich man's kid apologized. "I am very sorry, I didn't mean to spill the wine on your dress. You should understand that it was an accident." "Accident? I ruined my dress. And you said it was an accident," I barked. The rich kid went down on his knees and apologized. I got a glass of wine and poured the content on him. I regretted the action immediately. But the awesomeness on Brittany's face comforted me. Brittany and I left the party to her place. She praised me as if I had just conquered a gladiator. I wasn't pleased with myself. "Who does that?" Brittany was full of my praise. Before I saw the video myself, she had uploaded it. I later found out when browsing with her personal computer later that night. To my surprise, so many people had shared it. I got to school. I looked around for Frank, though I wasn't planning to apologize. I just wanted to see him for no reason whatsoever. I could not find him anywhere. I couldn't send a call through. Hudson later blew the news. He had left the city for another country. At that moment, I knew that it was a game over. Times passed, then came Brad. Brad was a transfer student from another city. This boy was the kind of boy Mama would be proud of. He looked older than his age. But after some research, the rest of the Beatles and I found out he is just 17. No, this can't be the truth. The guy looked so mature. Within the first few weeks in school, several girls had fought because of him. The Beatles were also in incoherence on this case. That will be the first time as far as I could recall. Every hot babe demands a hot guy, I guess. For the first in forever, Lucy, Pinky, and Brittany fought and never reconciled. I was still a great associate to Brittany while Lucy and Pinky enjoyed each other company. I wasn't interested in this guy because of his insane popularity. But having him for myself will significantly benefit me. It would increase my charm by miles. "Hello babe," that was Brittany by my desk. Everyone now sees us as best pals. Brittany was not to be trusted. That babe was a big snitch. She told me she approached Brad how she felt about him and Brad turned down her approach. "I want revenge," she said. Well, that's what I was good at. "No problem," I replied. I knew I was irresistible. Every high school can't afford to lose me once they are opportune. I started walking towards Brad. I wanted him to notice me, but frankly, the guy was tough. Later he fell. One afternoon, we met at the Dome one afternoon. He bumped onto me accidentally. And my science project fell. He picked up the pieces and reassembled them as quickly as he could go. I was impressed. "Can you have a cup of coffee with me? If you don't mind?" I asked of him. "I would rather have a bottle of beer with you at a bar," he responded. I smiled. I like this kind of guy. "So, a date it is," I rejoined. We said our bye-byes. And the two of us went our separate ways. I chatted up Brittany immediately. She was amazed. And she drew her plan. It was a perfect plan and would make this big guy have a significant fall. Brittany is undoubtedly next to the devil in deeds. After the chat, I started having mixed feelings. I wasn't so sure, but it was like I was beginning to like this dude. Brad is handsome, and to my experience, he is far from how Brittany described him. And everyone knows is that when Brittany said it is raining outside, you need to go and check for yourself. I decided to take note of this guy to see for myself. On Friday, Brad and I finally met at a bar to take some beers. The bartender didn't bother to ask for our age, judging by Brad's enormous stature. We got ourselves an empty sight and yacked away the whole time. The boy was amusing to be with. I got drunk, don't judge me. I don't drink. He got us a taxi and took me home. Most guys would have taken advantage of me that night. But he didn't. He dropped me at the door and introduced himself to my mum. I slept off on the couch. The following day was a weekend. I woke at noon. My mum gave me a spicy soup to drink. I took it. I was damn hungry. She set the table for lunch. And while we were taking the meal, most of the dining discussion was about Brad. It seemed my mum liked him. And so was I. For the first time, I can say I am really interested in someone. Later that day, I called my sister. We chatted a lot. She told me that Mum had told her about the whole thing. We both laughed about it. I said about the association between the Beatles and me and how we separated. She advised me to detach myself from such friendship. I knew she was right, and she was speaking from experience. But I had gone deep into these things. I didn't know how to call it short anymore. Brad and I started seeing each other frequently. You could tell something was going on between the two of us. But there had not been any official proposal. So, friends are the best you could call this kind of thing. And for a while, I had not been on talking terms with Brittany. We were not in disagreement, but just that we can't agree on a thing anymore. I started walking with my old friends. They had been waiting for me to get myself out of the madness I was in. You could tell that Brielle talked some sense into me. Brittany had noticed my lack of cooperation. And she had reconciled with the old Beatles members. Things just got worse for my companies and me. It was apparent that Brad only wanted to be a friend since his girlfriend regularly visited him from his previous school. I wasn't bothered, my friendship with him was worthwhile. Brittany tried to get to Brad, trying all her cunning moves. But I did give Brad a head start in the game. You could call me a snitch. It is fine, I am tired of seeing people get hurt. Most guys later found out that Brad and I were just friends. The long-awaiting suitors started coming up with their approaches. This time I was unnecessarily rude as I was. I realized I had been a bad bitch for so long. And many had been said about me. A lot of good people had been avoiding me. And I didn't notice. I was blindfolded by the things Brittany fed me with. My goal was to be popular and nothing more. I picked up so many lousy virtues on my way to fame. And my sister came out to be nicer than I taught. I was so much ashamed of the past few months. I received a few proposals and ignored the others. But none lasted for a month. With some lasting just a few days. I could get entangled with a guy today and tomorrow. He is no more interested in me. I was so much in need of a guy I could call my boyfriend. But to no avail. It was as if there was a famine of boys. No one lasted for at least a month. My hunt for a boyfriend increased. I refused to turn down people's approaches. But all ended within a short while. I told Brielle about this, she couldn't devise a means to solve the problem. I guessed she didn't know all too. I took up the courage to speak with Brad since we were good friends. I asked him what guys wanted in ladies. He couldn't give me a straight answer too. Even Stuart came knocking at the door again. This time, it looked like a payback. He ditched me before I even fell in love with him. What the hell is happening to me? It was as if the whole school planned to get back at me for my evil deeds. I needed a drastic change. I wanted things to go back to when I was that innocent beauty. I tried to redeem myself. Who am I to meet? Who is the head of these, or the whole school is just acting on this simultaneously? I could not figure out anything. I was confused. Who is behind all these? The Beatles and I had parted ways for a while now. We don't really exchange greetings. I really don't bother at first until recently. I had started thinking if they were involved in the dismay. This is what the group of girls is known for. And this is what they do best. They are better at tarnishing images than doing well in school. I started suspecting their moves and began to keep tags on them, hunting them with their own skills. After several weeks of monitoring their movements, I could not take them red-handed even though all accusing fingers pointed at them. I started checking on my friends after a failed attempt on the Beatle. They weren't shady, to be candid. But I didn't want to leave any stone unturned. Checking on them is really convenient since we are always together. But I can't predict their actions once they get home. I made it a habit to sleep periodically at their place. Even though they stayed up at night, it wasn't a reason to call the accused. After another futile effort, I thought of Brad. Can Brad stoop so low to that level? I don't know who to trust and who not to. I began another investigating job on him. I could tell the guy noticed my motive but did not care since he didn't find any reason for me to do that. For sure, he is not the one, but since he knows about what is going on, he is still a suspect but not prime. Brielle is the next on my list. She is miles away from home, but I can't afford to get her off the list. She called me more often than she did in the past. We shared more moments together and chatted a lot about our lives. Some about her school life and maybe fashion and some girls' talk. Things were smoother betwixt us. She had been my best friend in the past, but now I think she can make something up. But wait, why will she want to do me any harm? What will she gain from that? I am her little sister, and she is my whole world. Even if I tried to pop my nose in her matters, I could not do that well since she barely came home. She only comes on holiday. I don't know what to do and who to hold the victim. I don't like this period. I want to disappear from the surface of the earth before I become the laughingstock at school. Who can be involved in this evil act? Can it be the Beatles? My friends, Brad or Brielle? What do you think? You think? You think? You think?
Hi guys, I'm Tiffany. And I grew up being called Daddy's princess. But if ever a lie was detected real quick, this was it. If I'm Daddy's princess, then Daddy must be a king. And one thing for sure, kings have castles, but our home is far from being called one. For college dropouts who had to take on multiple jobs so we could at least have our plates half filled every morning and evening. They were doing bad, and although I had been deluded as a child by the mirage that I was an actual princess, reality soon caught up with me when I had to take on several chores at home from a very early age. Though we were content with what we had, we were far from comfortable. This is no life for a princess. This princess. Don't get it twisted. I am greatly loved by my parents, and even though they lack the elaborate means of saying so. This, however, hasn't stopped them from guarding me jealously from the prying eyes of the male folk. Princesses don't sell themselves short, Dad will always say as he cautioned me against getting too comfortable with the opposite sex. But I knew every princess is entitled to a Prince Charming. And so I just don't get why Dad won't let my prince find me. At least he'll rescue me from the jaws of poverty, and they'll have one less mouth to feed even though their belly will still not be filled. You could call me naive for taking the princess thing too far, but hey. I'm barely 16, and I fell quickly for the Cinderella story, so what do you expect? So back to where I was. A princess without a castle, crown, and cash. bearing the name, possessing the beauty and personality of a princess, but lacking the purse of royalty. Having parents who never really graduated and are not digitally, globally, and technologically up to date can be quite challenging, to say the least. The never-ending display of ignorance towards the opportunities that abound in the digital world has become a norm at home. They never seem to understand how their daughter, who would be turning 16 in a few weeks, chooses to spend her limited pastime making digital arts on the computer, which piles up the electricity bill, which we always find hard to pay. Hell was almost let loose once when Mummy overheard me saying to myself that I'll be selling for $100. You would think a dam broke through her eyes as she cried while telling her husband that his daughter is now trying to venture into cybercrimes. Dad wasn't having any of it. We had watched together on a sunny Sunday as the cops invaded the house of our neighbor and arrested their son Pete. He was being charged for his involvement as a member of a cybercrime syndicate that had its tentacles spread all over the country and was responsible for duping unsuspecting individuals of millions of dollars. Some victims were reported to have died from heart attacks, and a handful committed suicide due to depression. It was a shock, and you will need to understand the background of the person in question to grasp the surprise it came with. Pete was an 18-year-old who was the first child in a family made up of 6 comprising 4 children. His parents had decent jobs and did all to cater to the needs of him and his siblings. They were always properly dressed and behaved in a manner that endeared them to the hearts of the people in the neighborhood. Pete was a quiet and reserved young boy who always looked after his siblings in a manner that soon made those who were acquainted with the family address him as Deputy Dad. His light wasn't just shining at home. It shone in school, and within the neighborhood only brighter. He soon became the yardstick of excellence used by parents to determine where their children needed to improve. He was the pride of his parents. It was little wonder when you heard his father introduce himself as Mr. Parker, Pete's dad. Who would have thought that the statue of pride could quickly become an object of shame? The disgrace and embarrassment were so massive it quickly cast a shameful veil over past glories. Folks who had associated with the family in the past understandably started pulling back. Who would like to be labeled as a friend of criminals? Without wasting time, Dad grounded me without hearing me out. He was now more determined than ever to pay close attention to the few friends that I managed to keep. He wouldn't stand by and watch as I dragged the little integrity of the family's name to the mud. A good name is better than silver and gold, he fumed as he quoted the holy book. I didn't even have it in me to explain to them that I am into cryptocurrency, and it's not a criminal offense. Over the past weeks, I have been minting non-fungible tokens in their thousands and hoping it would sell. So that way I could raise a little money to buy my dress for prom, which coincided with my 16th birthday. A princess should at least get a birthday gift. And yay, that's no bad idea. I wasn't angry at my parents that night. I knew they acted out of love because they wouldn't want their daughter treading the wrong path. But I was sure disappointed because I was misunderstood. All I ever wanted to do was to try being independent for the good of all. I couldn't find where I had erred. I was only trying to do for myself what they couldn't do for me. What's the crime in that? As weeks turned into days and the prom drew nearer, everything in me knew I could make my fairy tale happy ending if I just had a dress, shoe, and a prince. If Cinderella could, then I can, or maybe try. And I already knew where to begin. Over time, I had lost interest in going to the prom that I didn't consider that of this year. But now I figured that some are born princesses while some are made princesses. And this was going to be a life-changing moment. One which I won't sit back and let slide like the other times. And even though I hadn't been asked out yet, it didn't matter much to me. After all, Cinderella got her date at the party. So I decided to talk to my parents about it because I had to buy a dress fit for a princess, and a shoe which must not be glass. If I'm going to get a prince, then I sure need to look like a princess. I had a difficult time finding my way to their room as my mind was already clouded with scenes of disapproval from the past replaying so clearly in my head. For reasons so obvious. I always stayed away from proms in the past because Mom and Dad couldn't afford a dress. There was always a bill long overdue, so getting me set for prom was a luxury they could only afford in my dreams. I had gotten used to the litany of poverty-decorated reasons why I had to sit each one out year after year that I finally stopped asking. But standing before their door, I just wished for a positive response for the first time in my life. I had barely announced my presence with a knock when I heard Mummy's voice from within making sounds whose emotions I couldn't tell. These sounds were quite different from the last time when Dad had just returned from a 3-month trip. A light taps to the slightly open door, and I found myself standing before my parents. They both looked all right, but being acquainted with it from birth, I could see it on their faces, I could smell it very strongly in the room, and I rightly knew just then that we were in serious debt. I just didn't know how bad. I had a lot of emotions running through me, and I was beginning to feel guilty for wanting to make a request. Any request made now would further ruin the atmosphere. How would I make my desire known without coming off as an ungrateful child who doesn't understand the level of sacrifices being made daily just to keep some air in my nose? Either way, I was here now, so I might as well just get on with it. I started by letting them know that I appreciate all that they have done, are doing, and will continue to do for me, but I simply wanted to be a part of the prom this year for the first time in my life, and I'll be needing a dress. I had nothing decent to wear for prom as it had been a while they got me new clothes. This was the final chance I had to experience what a prom was like before I graduated. Time has never really moved so slow as Mummy looked intently at me with a smile that couldn't hide her teary eyes. Pulling me closer for a warm embrace, she burst into tears that broke me. While I tried to console her, I could hear Daddy's footsteps fading. He had always been the better one at concealing emotions. All the same, I knew he was hurt by the fact that he had not been able to give me the kind of life I desired. Not even for once. Pulling herself together, Mummy tells me the very thing I had known: we were neck deep in debt. Our rent had been 6 months overdue, and we had just been served an eviction notice for 3 weeks or face a forceful ejection. It hit me hard. I was so sure the walls were turning real fast. All this time I thought we were at the bottom of the barrel. I never knew we were under it. I woke up with a feeling worse than a hangover. It wasn't the first time I had to be denied, but it was the first time it caused a breakdown. If it were possible, I would tear the pages of last night out of the story of my life. It was clear my birthday this year was going to feature the usual: nothing. I could see that my teeny-tiny dreams of being swept out of poverty by a knight in shining armor and given the kind of life desired were nothing more than it was: a dream. The day I quit looking forward to finally arrived. Unlike Cinderella, I had no fairy godmother who could turn my wishes into reality, so I didn't bother making any. I was going to get busy just to keep my thoughts from drifting off to where I wouldn't be. It was prom day, and it was my birthday. But it will still end up like every other day. Chores, chores, chores. While getting off my bed and making my way to the kitchen for a glass of water, I discovered the lights in the sitting room were unusually on. This was about 3 a.m., and my parents would still be in bed at this time. I figured Daddy may have forgotten to put off the lights when he returned last night, and it was so unlike him. If anyone understood firsthand the need to cut costs by conserving resources, he was the one. He often got angry each time I left my desktop running, and all he needed was a little reason to take it away from me. Little wonder I was grounded from it without being heard. Anyways, it was all in the past, even though I was still hurting from not being able to access my digital arts. I took a detour, branching out to put off the lights when I was dazzled by the sights I saw. The sitting room was beautifully decorated with pink, a color fit for a princess, and ribbons were saying "Happy Birthday, Princess." I knew I wasn't dreaming, but I doubt I woke up in the very house where I slept. This wasn't here last night. Did Fairy Godmother visit us last while I slept? However, what happened didn't matter. I was just glad it happened. Looking round in utter amazement, I saw Daddy fast asleep on the couch, entangled with ribbons while holding a scissor. I could easily solve the puzzle. My dad had stayed up after I went to bed just to make sure I never knew what he was up to. He probably got tired and slept off. Well, I wasn't about to ruin my surprise witch for me. doesn't come around very often, so I made my way back into my room. And although I was still thirsty, I had a feeling of satisfaction which I would not trade for a glass of water. As I lay on the bed, several thoughts just passed through me. On one hand, I was glad and grateful that my parents were going out of their way to make me feel special for the first time in a very long time, not minding the mess we were in. But on the other hand, I couldn't help but think I was the one who pressured them into doing so when I made my request a few days ago, or could it be that my parents amassed a fortune these past few days? Whatever the case was, I was just going to live the moment. It took almost forever for the day to break, but thank God it finally did. I could hear Mummy's brisk steps finding their way to my room and had to act as though I was fast asleep. I waited for her to call me the second time before turning around and letting off a lazy good morning that perfectly covered my excitement. She said some friends were coming over real quick, and I had to quickly tidy up the sitting room. She was good at feigning the part, but I was a better actress. I knew I had to pretend to be in the dark, so I hurriedly got up and made a dash for the sitting room while she followed behind. Opening the door, I dropped my jaw in a reprised surprise roll. I saw Daddy coming towards Mum and me as he joined her in shouting surprise. Now I must confess that though I saw it coming earlier and even acted surprised now, the joy was all too real to be fake. I couldn't help the tears that flowed down as I gave Daddy a warm embrace. I did feel like a princess. Daddy's princess. And if this was a dream, I won't want to wake up. While sitting down on the couch and savoring the love shown, my joy was almost short-lived as I remembered we had recently been served a notice. As though he could read my thoughts, Daddy said he knew we were neck-deep in debt. And things were not going great. Well, things have never really been great. Fashionable moving out of the area. And I may need to go and stay with my grandma, but they thought about what I said and knew it was only fair they reminded me of their love in a different way. He hardly finished speaking when Mum pointed at a box sparsely wrapped. I opened it, and in my hand was the most beautiful silver gown I had ever owned, and a shoe and tiara to match. One fit for a princess. I must have a fairy godmother somewhere, because fantasy is turning into reality faster than I could ever imagine. I knew what it meant without having to hear them say it. I was going to the prom. Now I was a sure believer that dreams do come true. I had all that was needed to make my happy ending except a prince, but I wasn't bothered. He was going to be somewhere waiting for me at the prom, and I'll be there. That was all that mattered. It was exactly 6:45 p.m. when my cab pulled over at the prom venue, which had already begun 45 minutes earlier on. And I was already breaking a sweat. It was the first time since my lifetime that I'll be going out for a party free from Daddy's protective eyes. Making an entrance was a harder step to take. Everything seemed to stop. Everyone seemed to be looking towards me. What have I done? I suddenly began wishing the ground would just open up at this point. I could feel them gazing intently at me. I was certain they were all surprised to see me outside the four walls of a classroom. Not dressed in a uniform, but decked in the attire best befitting a royalty. No sooner had I pondered on what to do did my friend Stephanie walk up to me with an expression that stated the obvious. "You look amazing," she said. Stephanie was from a wealthy family who lived the good life. Her dad was an engineer who owned a firm he established 25 years ago. And the mom happened to be the only grandchild of the only child to a late senator in the country who left behind a family business worth over $500 million. So they had no issues providing more than enough to keep her comfortable. As was the custom of the wealthy who had an empire, Stephanie was expected alongside her two junior brothers to take over the family business. And all her life from the day of birth was filled with activities that would ensure she was ready when the time came. However, she soon discovered that while growing up that she wanted little or no part in the family business. She had other interests, and only thought it fitting to build her legacy. But how was she going to let her parents know and accept her decision without stirring up their anger? She was caught up in the middle of pleasing her parents at her own expense. And this soon started affecting her performance in and out of class. It was when she heard the English teacher read a portion of my essay to the class that she picked interest in me. The words read, "We only function best when we become our true self." We bonded rather quickly, and she then opened up to me on what she was passing through. After pouring out her heart to me, I told her to do the same to her parents with hopes that they will eventually see reason, and thank God they did. Well, not after her mom put up a fight. Her dad has never been in support of enforcing life-changing choices on an individual. He believed people should be allowed to find their place in life, and given the liberty of choosing the path to get there. Mom thought otherwise. This was tradition, and she would not be the one to break it. She had the mindset that the whole children were expected to be actively involved in the family business. Her mom was, she followed suit, and Stephanie will be no different. The family was divided for days. Her mom saw herself as a failure who could not continue with the pattern. She could not understand why the husband who had approved of her actions over the years now suddenly decided to oppose her. She moved into another room and even quit having meals with the family. She tried playing the victim, but she wasn't. Stephanie was. Stephanie was already caught up in a dilemma created by her mom's ego. Would it be fair to her if she pleased her mom at the expense of her happiness? She, now feeling guilty, started reconsidering her stance. She could not bear to see her once united family broke up because of her happiness. But as soon as spoke to her dad about it, he refused and encouraged her to stand by her desire. He was no longer willing to sacrifice the happiness of his daughter just for the ego of his wife. He wasn't going to fall for her gimmicks. One thing he was so certain of was the fact that his wife of over 20 years loved him and the kids. And it was only a matter of time before she yielded. All it took was a call that Stephanie had suffered a breakdown and had to be rushed to the school infirmary. Then it dawned on her mom that she loved her daughter above her ego, and she would rather have a daughter who was alive and doing what she wanted than lose one because of ego. She wept in the infirmary as she asked her daughter for forgiveness and assured her of her support and love in any path she chooses to take in life. Within a few days, life returned to Stephanie, and she had me to thank for it. I had proven my faithfulness, and although the disparity in our background was much, she nonetheless remained a true friend who has never for once taunted me for my broken background. Earlier on, after the surprise party and the approval to attend this year's prom, I called to see if I could join her since I knew she'll most likely be driven there. But her response further reminded me of my mission tonight. She was going to be picked up by her date. She did promise to drop me off on her way home after the party. Dad had approved of my relationship with Stephanie because he had worked for her father once. And by his assessment, he was a good man. We made our way to a table where her date and his friends were. I felt uneasy sitting down there and listening to them chatter while enduring the uneasiness that came from the fixed gaze of Josh, the new boy in class. Josh is a 20-year-old rich kid who had recently moved over into our area. And for a 65 blonde with green eyes, he quickly found favor among ladies. Even Tiffany admired him from a distance. But I wasn't prepared to join the league of ladies who flocked around him because I knew he was trouble. A guy this hot is a playboy, and I had long resolved not to be anyone's plaything. Remember, a princess doesn't sell herself short, so there was no way he could feature on my list if I had one. Within minutes it was time to dance. Each couple to the dance floor. While I pretended to be distracted by those already dancing, I could see Josh from the corner of my eyes taking majestic strides towards me. Every hair stood on my body as I felt the goose pimple rise. Dear Lord, what do I do? I needed a prince. My prince. Not a playboy. I had barely begun planning to ponder my next line of action when I perceived the fragrance of his perfume. He stretched out his hands as his masculine baritone echoed the words, "Can I have this dance?" Everything in me knew I wanted to. And even though I said I wasn't tethered, he knew I was only playing hard to get because I had already gripped his hand. I finally felt stupid. My emotions had just betrayed me. I watched him grin softly as he pulled me up on my feet and guided me onto the dance floor where everyone else was already minding their business. It took him no time to figure out I didn't know my way around the dance floor, but he was no novice, so he simply guided me. With his arms wrapped around my waist and killer gazes shot from his eyes to mine, I found myself forgetting about the prince The Playboy was all my vision could capture. The princess and the Playboy. I could swear I had my defenses set up, but I saw them come crashing down when he softly whispered in my ears, "You are beautiful." Once again my emotions betrayed me as I found myself blushing. I thought he was going to come for my lips. I badly wanted him to. He had me just where he wanted. He does and he knew it. This was not what I bargained for, but at this point, it felt like the best deal available, the Playboy until the prince arrives. It didn't just feel right, it felt perfect. For a moment there it felt as if we were alone there. Just the two of us in my world, and it felt so complete. My moment of fantasy came to a halt when the music stopped. We had to return to our seats, but this time around Josh made me sit beside him. How he could get me to do things without an ounce of resistance on my part was very surprising. We got off talking and I could not help but admire his masculine features. He had an aura of confidence emanating from him which magnified everything hot thing about him, but though confident, he was not proud in any way. I saw a part of him I had never seen before, and it was clear I had misjudged him. He seemed to know what to say, how, and when to say it. I did ask a question that had disturbed me all along. And another person would have asked the same thing, because how a guy this hot could come to a prom without a date is a sight you don't usually see. Well, it turns out that he was stood up by his supposed date that night. And I was glad she did. But I had questions. What happens after tonight? What becomes of this conversation? Where does it lead us? The night finally drew to a close, and it was already evident I won't be joining Stephanie's ride. Josh had offered to take me home. A gentleman indeed. He pulled over just in front of my house as requested for my number, which I readily gave. The lights on the inside indicated my parents were still up. My mom opened the door before I could knock, and I saw the expression of concern on their faces. For some reason, Dad didn't ask about the handsome guy who dropped me off as the initial plan to join Stephanie back. I guess he was just glad I arrived safely after having a good time, although I knew that at some point I would have some explaining to do. It would not be tonight. Dad had made a promise that he would look out for the friends that I kept, and I was certain that he would fulfill it. Reminiscing over the good time with the good guy was what I wasn't going to do in a hurry. It suddenly dawned on me that I hadn't thought about my imaginary Prince Charming for over 3 hours. I wasn't the least bothered that I never met him. The Playboy had been filled up the void very well. On the second thought, I did meet my prince. Oh my gosh. It was Josh. I eagerly held my phone, anticipating a phone call or text. And it did come. As expected, I cherished and savored every letter, word, and sentence. He thanked me for standing in as his date tonight and hoped to get to know me better. He even mentioned his dad's housewarming party coming up in 3 months, and asked that I come around. Now my excitement and hope for a happy ending were going to be dashed in pieces. His invitation now brought the sad reality back to mind. We were moving out of the area in 3 weeks. As I lay nursing my wounds from a broken heart, I soon found myself becoming angry at everything. Why did I go to the prom? Why did my parents give in to my request? Why was this year not like the last? If I had stayed back, I would not have met Josh. And I won't be in this mess. Everything seemed to share a part of the blame, and even the fairy godmother was not exempted. At this point, I needed a distraction. Any distraction was welcome. But it seemed impossible, as everything seemed to remind me of my almost happy never after. I was going to lose something I barely had. Turning over to my desktop, I picked myself up, hoping to find momentary relief in form of distraction. And my crypto was the next best exciting thing after Josh. Along with the surprise earlier in the day, Dad had equally lifted the ban, and so I had nothing keeping me from my digital arts. Before long I was in my digital space, and I just froze to my bones. How possible could this be? I've been getting surprises all day, but this beats it. One of my digital arts just auctioned for the crypto equivalent to $1 million. I could barely sleep. Once it was daybreak, I rushed back to confirm I wasn't dreaming. It was still there. $1 million. Thank you, fairy godmother. So sorry for the blame. I now started processing what had just taken place and its implications. My dream was going to come through. We could buy the house and stay back in the area so that way I could be close to my prince, although I doubt I would still need money. Everything was set for a perfect ending. But there seemed to always be a small problem, even when $1 million was available. How do I tell and convince my parents that I legitimately became a millionaire overnight? How do I get them to believe that they can sleep comfortably in a better house and not be on the lookout for cops? It seems that even with $1 million, I may not still be able to help my parents without reprogramming their mindset, and it wasn't going to be a walk in the park. Hey guys, I would love to know your thoughts on what decision you feel is best for me. What will you do if you were me?
How I milked my neighbor's goat in 10 minutes. Hi guys, I'm Khloe, and if you ever met anyone crazier than I consider myself fun to be with it. You can actually get crazy with me. I would take up adventures simply because it was just an adventure. For reasons which I can't properly understand, I have always had a level of curiosity you don't get to see in most people you meet on a daily. Some say curiosity killed the cat. Well, for Khloe, curiously was her life wire. The very thing that kept her going. My curiosity always gave me something new to focus on and a direction in which I could channel my energy. I would swim through land or walk on water just to find answers about certain things that puzzled me, and trust me, I always had questions. My head seems to always question the reason why things were the way they were. The cause and effect of certain actions taken. This has made me learn by experience 1,000 ways things don't work. For instance, one time while I was just 3 years old, I got surprised when I closely observed that a newly wedded couple that was our next-door neighbor. I could tell her stomach of the wife was increasingly getting bigger than Mummy's own. This gave me quite a great bit of concern because Mummy was older than her and by default should have the bigger stomach. While I was still trying to put pieces together, I discovered that the size was no more as big as it was, but she now carried a child smaller than myself. I couldn't help it anymore, and so I walked up to Mummy, who seemed rather happy this woman was beating her to the belly race. "Mummy, from where did she get the baby?" I inquired. "She got it from within her," Mummy said. "Who put it within her?" I further asked. "Well, she has always had it within her, she just decided to bring it out now," Mummy replied, cleverly avoiding details that were not fit for a 5-year-old. I wasn't satisfied, and it was no new knowledge that I won't leave until my curiosity had been satisfied and my questions answered. How did she bring it out? Does she still have any more left in her? While Mummy was still figuring out a way of escape, I gave the final blow. "Can you bring out a baby for me now?" At this point, a dad who was amused and thrilled altogether by the uncommon intelligence displayed by me just like other times burst out laughing as he picked me up from the ground. "Yes, when Mummy is ready, she will bring out one," he said while passing her a naughty glance. Though my curiosity was still not satisfied yet, I had the promise of a baby which I eagerly now looked forward to, and so I let the sleeping dog lie. Children have a knack for imitating what they see others do. Well, Khloe was not your regular kid. If I wasn't imitating what I had seen, I was initiating what I had imagined. This lesson my parents learned very early, and so while great caution was taken when doing certain things while I was around, they equally paid close attention when I was on my own because I was always up to something. Fast forward to a year later and I had my 4th birthday party being celebrated. It was usually fun, and this time was no different. The colorful event had neighbors, friends, and well-wishers come over. While they sang the traditional happy birthday song, my eyes were fixed on the 4 lit candles which I was expected to blow out. And as you will rightly guess, I had questions. One of the reasons you would want to avoid my questions is because I usually paid attention to details others might pass on as insignificant. I won't say that I have a photographic memory, but I clearly remember that during last year's birthday celebration, I had just 3 wax candles to blow out. But now they were 4. One thing I find fascinating is the fact that I was never allowed to eat them. What in the world were candles doing on a cake when you are not allowed to eat them? Did they make the cake sweeter? Why were they now 4? I could have gone on a quest to get answers from Mummy and Daddy almost immediately. But it was my birthday party and they were all over the place, and I won't get the attention I needed. If I was going to get answers, I would have to find them myself, and so I began to hatch a plan. The taste of the pudding has got to be in the eating, so if you ever come around and get served something nice with candles in it, the whole credit shouldn't be given to Mum because your baby girl equally paid the cooking pot a visit. Standing in front of the mirror, I had never been more proud and excited. The holidays were over and today was resumption day. Mum and Dad would finally heave temporal sighs of relief as I'll be away from home for a few hours. I was already 16 and from all indications, I got wilder and more inquisitive with age. Mom had finally fulfilled the promise of bringing out a baby 2 times over. Keeping up with my siblings was not really going to be a difficult task. No, they already dealt with Khloe. Unlike me, my 2 siblings were just regular kids who were only intrigued by things they saw but lost interest immediately they saw something else. Yeah, they were easily distracted, but it was going to be easy keeping them on a leash. I was quite popular in school. I don't really know how I do it, but it just seemed real easy making my presence felt. One way or another, Khloe would always happen. I had no issues making friends. If you could get crazy, then we could be besties. Teachers knew me for me. Quite a few had noted that they were always glad when rounding up a lesson. I asked questions that kept them on their toes. Don't get me wrong, even though my questions could seem and sound naughty, they didn't stem from a motive to cause mischief but from a desire to learn. If I have already painted the picture of a girl who always came out of every adventure decked in glory, then please accept my apology. Curiosity, like most things, has got its pros and cons, and for a girl who was always on the go, I got into some kind of trouble every now and then. Most times, they were life-threatening, and other times, they just simply created foes. I have had to be rescued from a fire incident started by me. A friend had to be rushed to the emergency room, all because she joined me in an expedition that didn't really come out as planned. In a church, at a party, in school, and everywhere Khloe has been, I have had an unfair share of being criticized more than celebrated. Whenever Khloe happened, it was really easy to see me as a kid without a proper home upbringing who was sore on the skin of everyone, especially her parents. But if I pull off a stunt that ends well, my parents were considered fortunate to have me in the family. We have had visitors come to our home at odd times. Some came to plead with my parents to keep me far from their children, others came to issue warnings to me right in front of my parents. Well, it never really bothered me the least bit. I always try to be Khloe, and there are times it's synonymous with danger and destruction, or glory and fame. So when next you seem to envy me, just remember that there are always two sides to a coin. Like every other student, I did have certain subjects that easily appealed to me. One of which was biology. Each topic just gave me so many avenues for adventure. So now you can understand my excitement when the first teacher to step into the class was the biology teacher. She immediately had my attention when she announced that we were going to study the reproductive system of animals. No sooner had she said so did I find myself walking the part of a pleasurable memory lane. It all started at the end of last semester when our final topic was the human reproductive system and reproduction. I had listened with rapt attention as she explained the steps involved taken before reproduction can occur. This was really a bad time to become Khloe, but it was too late. I'm always Khloe. I then realized I was just like Mom and the neighbor. I equally had babies in me. Now it wouldn't hurt to bring out one, would it? Of course, now I know that it takes two to tango. I needed someone willing to tango. The holidays were around the corner, and I didn't know if I could utilize it. A 3-day visit to Granny was all the opportunity I would get. It was actually a tradition for us to pay Granny a visit every end of the year. There we had our Thanksgiving as a family. We got to know some cousins who we'll never think about once we left. Grandma was not Granny in every sense of the word. She was a 75-year-old woman who still had the strength of a 50-year-old, and had always been an ardent advocate of morality and discipline. Arrangements were made when she turned 65 to get someone to assist her. But she vehemently opposed it. She hated to think of herself as being so vulnerable she would need a helper. A blow from arthritis at age 70 had her reconsidering her stance. This was when Dave was introduced into the scene. A grumpy 12-year-old who just sat around waiting for instructions. Not much is known about Dave's past except that he was the 5th child of a woman who had 6 children for different men. His mom lived a promiscuous life, and she took in for several men who either denied being responsible for the pregnancy or abandoned her to raise the kids alone, as some of them were already married with kids. This further led her into prostitution as a means of livelihood. She learned by experience that being a single mom barely had any advantage, as she was now plagued with a level of poverty so intense that the kids were neglected. When it became apparent that the income she generated through her trade was not going to be enough for her and the kids, she decided to initiate those old enough into one vice or the other. For the 2 girls who just became teens, she would often send them to spend the night with various men, and they would return with the proceeds by daybreak. They were quickly exposed to the lifestyle of sex and drugs. The boys were not spared either. Once they were old enough to run, she sent them out to the streets to go pickpocketing. The home quickly became an abode for criminals. While Dave turned 3 years, his mom sexually contracted a deadly disease and passed away. Now being orphaned at an early age, he was sent into the orphanage home pending when foster parents were willing to adopt him. Although the kind of lifestyle Dave experienced in his home was not really present at the orphanage was no kinder to him. The matrons placed over the children always diverted the funds and foodstuffs donated by well-meaning individuals and firms, and this caused the children to be malnourished and neglected to a great extent. The kids soon got used to the lifestyle of survival of the fittest. Bullying was a constant feature in the house, and it was no news when you heard that a kid had run away from the home. If brought back to the orphanage, the kid was made to face severe punishments just to make sure he never repeated the act. Dave ran away twice. The first time was when he was 7 years of age, and the second time was when he was about clocking 12 in 3 days. It was while my dad was at the orphanage making inquiries about the adoption process that he saw Dave being led back into the home. The look on the faces of other children suggested that Dave was in for a treatment he knew too well. There was just something about the whole scene that Daddy could relate to. Upon further inquiry about Dave, he saw so much of himself in Dave that he decided that he, Dave, fit the profile of the individual Grandma needed around. Of course, Dave would need to have some work done on him, but Dad was convinced Grandma was well suited to handle Dave. After all, she did a good job on him years back. And Dave was really no different. He was just going through the same things Dad experienced years ago. My dad was the first of 3 children, all from the same couple. He was the product of pure love between 2 couples. Unlike Dave, he knew his father and had the temporal privilege of enjoying a father's love. He was full of life until his father lost his life in a ghastly motor accident. At the age of 6, he had become fatherless. His mom tried all she could to fill up the space created by her husband. She took up multiple jobs and even turned down a couple of suitors who had proposed marriage because she felt that they might not totally love her kids. The demands of her jobs occasionally made her unavoidably absent from the life of her kids, and this began to affect them negatively. Dad soon becomes an object of ridicule in class. He was not spared the torments of bullies, and this further caused a decline in his grade. He gradually became a recluse, cutting off from the rest of the world when he still had a lot to offer. The kid who was once full of energy and positivity now battled with low self-esteem. He saw himself amounting to nothing and thought that he would die soon. A thought that he saw as a relief since it would put an end to his misery. Grandma often came home late at night and was always too tired to check up on how the day went for the kids. So it took a while before she noticed the mess she had made. She immediately began making adjustments by cutting down her work hours, visiting the kids in school twice a week, and spending more time with them at home. As soon as Dad started getting the reassurance of his mother's love, he began standing up to the bullies in school because he knew his mom would show up to his defense as she once did when she confronted a bully who regularly picked up on Dad. She reported the matter to the school authorities and the boy was suspended for a while. As time went by, Grandma rebuilt his confidence and self-esteem. She made him always seek something positive in any negative circumstance. Thanks to Grandma's resilience, Dad turned out great, and he knew she could do the same for Dave. Making our way to the front porch of Granny's house, we were greeted by the now 17-year-old Dave who, although was far from being a fine gentleman, was now so full of life. It was no surprise. Grandma's recipe had worked just as Mom and Dad said it would. It always worked. It worked on Dad and it helped shape him into a man very conscious of how limited time is. Although Dave was so eager to please everyone, it was the night before we left that I paid attention to him. I was actually keeping him at arm's length because there was really nothing about him that appealed to me. The house was finally crowned as uncles came with their families. This time you're alone, we had 5 babies added to the family. The rooms were filled up and the kids were made to share the same room with Dave. Deep into the night, you could hear the little babies crying in the other room, and while it kept me from falling asleep, everyone else had dozed off, or so I thought. The babies reminded me of the reproduction lessons we had had and my desire to explore. While I tried taking my mind off it, Dave sleepily crossed his hand over me, laying it on my belly. I made to brush his hand aside, but that became my undoing as it grazed the tip of my breasts. That sent a sweet tingling sensation running down my body, and I had to now move my body in a rhythmic fashion to ensure a repetition of body contact. Before long, I felt something rock hard poking and rubbing me. In no time I found myself guiding his hands down a warm, moist, and slippery path which felt so good. I then wondered why my teacher skipped the part where you find yourself on the moon. A shout from Grandma was what it took to end a journey that had barely begun. She had fallen down while making her way to the restroom. We were all surrounding her in no time, and she had to be rushed to the clinic where she was admitted for the night, and Mom and Dave had to stay with her. By morning, she was declared all right but advised to rest a lot. Dad picked up Mom, Grandma, and Dave from the clinic before taking us back home. I was really frustrated as I had some unfinished business. Standing on the porch and waving goodbye as Daddy drove off was Dave, who I was certain couldn't wait for the next Thanksgiving. I may not have completed this expedition, but it gave me a renewed passion to seize the opportunity when next it came. Wherever it came, back to the classroom, the lesson was delivered as expected. We specifically learned about the reproduction of a goat and how it breastfed its kid. The whole class was almost thrown into a frenzy at some point when the teacher mentioned that a kid wasn't the only one who took goat milk. Humans equally did. You could literally see the look of disgust on our faces. It was very difficult putting the pieces together. If we took the same milk the goats did, can we be called goats? Why don't we have the same horn they had? Why don't we walk on all fours just as they did? Why don't we bleat the same way they did? Can we eat the grass they ate and still stay healthy? The teacher very well knew that he had some questions to answer, but he wanted to keep us anticipating the next class, so he decided not to take questions today. I've never had the patience to wait for an answer. You either give it to me now or I get it now. I wasn't going to let this pass, and you could bet on it. I needed to know if I belonged to the family of goats. Immediately I got home, I headed straight for my laptop. It was one of the tools which aided me in fact findings. I started surfing the web looking for goats and answers. After a few minutes, it became clear. Humans actually consume goat milk, but it passed through processes that made it safe for us. Wow, I was glad I wasn't a goat. Curiosity further led me into watching how this goat milk was obtained. I watched the milking process. It looked very easy, and I knew that I could do it. I knew I would do it. This time, I won't need a partner. I only need a goat. For the very first time in a long time, I almost believed I had run out of ideas. How was I going to lay my hands on a goat? Every possible means seemed to have its own hurdle. I couldn't visit the zoo just to milk a goat. I couldn't suddenly ask Mom and Dad to get me a goat as a pet. We already had 3 dogs which regularly made messes I had to clean up while fuming with rage. They would definitely know that I was up to something, and I am not keen on bringing them in on my next point of gender. The only option remaining on my list happened to be Mrs. Coker, a neighbor whom I disliked. I may be overreacting, but she always seemed more creepy and less friendly to me. Her constant smiles wouldn't make me budge on my stance. She was a 40-year-old divorcee with a daughter my age, and rather than remarry, chose to surround herself with various kinds of animals for pets. Well, I doubt she had suitors who wanted to marry her. She looked like a goat and weighed like a cow, and although she didn't have suitors, she had cows. Goats, horses, dogs, chickens, and kittens. Her home was like a mini zoo, but if I ever get to milk a goat, it was going to be hers. There were stories of her past that we were not sure were false. Rumor had it that most of the women in her family didn't have stable homes. Her grandmother was a divorcee, and so was her mum. She grew up in a home that was filled with abuse. She had watched his mother always got in an argument with her father, who ended up beating her most of the time. Her dad soon began bringing other ladies into the house just because he claimed that his wife, who nags a lot, has refused to get intimate with him since they last had an argument. It was said that rather than try to make up with her husband, her mum now decided to return the favor by equally bringing men into the home just to have sex with them. She often paid these men, who were sometimes younger than her. Her husband decided to get a divorce from her when he once walked in on her making love with a man. And they were both naked. Mrs. Coker had seen all this, and it had quite an impact on her. She saw marriage as a thing to be dreaded. She made up her mind never to get married, but at the age of 25, she saw herself in the home of a widower who had proposed to marry her after she got raped and impregnated. Not wanting to face life alone with a child by her side, she reluctantly accepted, but things didn't work out as she thought. The widower was a man who refused to bring anything to the table. He just exploited Mrs. Coker. It was when he beat her up for refusing to give him the money she didn't have that she knew that she would be better off alone with her daughter. She divorced him and decided to start rearing animals as a means of dealing with the loneliness she felt. Mrs. Coker became a farmer who randomly shared her proceeds with the neighbors on weekends. She didn't have any mouth to feed except her daughter Meg, and so, you would often see them hand in gloves, going to families to distribute eggs, milk, or some dairy produce. She was loved by all except me, and whenever I was greeted by their smiles, I returned them with a scripted grin. Parents would sometimes drop off their children with them, and they took no small delight in teaching them practical agriculture. This was the part I wanted. Practical agriculture. Practically milking a goat, but if I was going to be a student, I would need to like the teachers, or at least pretend to. Her daughter took after her in looks and size, and eventually surpassed her mom. She looked like a goat, weighed like a cow, ate like a horse, and drank like a camel. In fact, it seemed as though anything she did was done in excess. An attitude that I found really offensive. In class, she ate in excess, laughed in excess, played in excess, and fought in excess. The only thing she never had in excess was good grades. You could say she failed in excess. At one time, she seized every opportunity to get close to me, but she wasn't the kind of friend I wanted. I love people who are crazy, not stupid. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and it was clear that I had to now extend a hand of friendship if I was ever going to get near the goats. Without wasting time, I started executing my plan the next day in school. It wasn't difficult finding an opportunity as I knew she always never did her assignments at home. She had to copy it from someone else in school. I was going to save her today. I gave her my book, which she hastily took, and that began our friendship. While she saw me as an escape route to better grades, I saw her as the path that leads to the goats. This sudden relationship progressed at a very quick pace, and she soon started coming over to our house so we could do the assignments which we were given in school. As you would rightly guess, I did the assignments and just copied them. Before long, she became a regular visitor at our home, and although my mom and dad were very much surprised as everyone else was, they were not against the friendship as it meant we received more agricultural produce. You could call me a manipulator, but I was getting close to my goal. And besides, our relationship was mutually beneficial to everyone involved. I was helping her get good grades, and it was only fair she helped me get some good milk. Did I really like her personality? No, I didn't. Was she ever going to be more than access to milking the goats? I don't know. What happens to the relationship after I get the milk? I don't know. Time will tell. When I got to that bridge, then I would figure out how to cross it. Meg didn't show up in class on a Thursday, and word soon got out that she had taken ill. On getting home, I informed my parents about it together. We all went to visit her. It turned out that she had caught a cold, but it wasn't so serious. The doctor advised that she took out time to rest, and this meant that she had to stay away from the animals. We weren't the only ones who came visiting, but as her friend, I quickly made myself feel at home. The animals were yet to be fed that evening, and I readily offered to help Mrs. Coker feed them. My parents left without me as I was still tending to the animals while Mrs. Coker received the visitors and tended to Meg. When it was time to leave, Mrs. Coker was very grateful that I came around as she was already too busy to tend to the animals. I told her it was no big deal. I was just being there for a friend. I promised to come by every day to check up on Meg and help feed the animals. My parents were really impressed with the attitude I displayed, and they commended me for it. I eagerly anticipated my arrival at the Coker farm residence. I was greeted by the ever-smiling farm owner, who couldn't hide her excitement at my arrival. I went to check up on Meg, who was observing a bed rest just as the doctor advised. I needed to bring her up to speed on what has been going on in school before I'll feed the animals. While I was discussing with Meg, her mom interrupted us, saying that she had to go down to the pharmacy to pick up the drugs the doctor prescribed for Meg. Immediately she left, I rounded up my session with Meg and headed straight for the animals. I quickly attended to the other animals but saved the goat for last. Upon finishing with the other animals, I realized that I had a few minutes before Mrs. Coker arrived and put a stop to my escapade. This was the moment I had been waiting for, and I wasn't going to wait any longer. I quickly rushed over to the section where the goats were kept, and without much thought, I descended on the first goat I could lay my hands on. It seemed harder than I thought, as I found it difficult to get the goat to release some milk. I was doing exactly what I had seen in the video which I watched, or so I thought. I finally reached a milestone in the 10th minute when the goat released a gluey substance. But my joy was short-lived after I examined the substance, and it didn't look like the milk I had seen. Then I froze when I discovered that I was in a hurry, that I forgot to check the gender of the goat. Oh my God, this was a male goat. I was mad. Have I come all this way for nothing? Did I unwillingly enter into a relationship with the Cokers all for nothing? Did I tend to the sick, and had all her assignments done all for nothing? What was I going to do? Do I immediately start all over again? I knew it was not possible, because Mrs. Coker was probably on her way back. I had ruined my opportunity to milk a goat, and I didn't know when next it was going to come. I didn't know when next Meg would fall ill, and her mom would leave her in my care to go and get drugs. Another thought seemed better. What if I just opened up to Mrs. Coker that I would love to milk a goat? That way, I would not have to be looking over my shoulders or hoping that someone gets ill. Hey guys, what will you do if you were me? Would you continue with the friendship that you never really wanted? I would love to know your thoughts about it.